Well, oh, there's Anthony. There's Anthony.
Ah, there she
Oh,
is.
there they are. Ah, what do you what do you think, Anthony, Elizabeth?
What are we doing here? I think we should wait a couple of minutes, just
Sure.
let the room continue to fill up,
Okay.
as it were.
Check in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it looks like we're gonna have a big crowd.
Yeah.
Boy, we're already at 175.
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
Going for two.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Uh, how are we doing? Yikes. Getting up there.
Yeah. Where are we? Goodness. Wow. Almost to 250. Okay. What do you think?
Well, what is it? 34. We can give it 2 more minutes, let's say.
Okay.
It's
Okay. We'll give them 2 minutes. Okay.
Anthony, would you like Kevin to go ahead and give everybody the rules of the road for the Zoom meeting?
Yes, and then I think Ed will
Yeah.
greet everyone.
Yeah. That sounds good. Might as well.
Welcome, everyone. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you will notice that you are currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting, except for the committee co-chairs, Elizabeth, Anthony, and Ed, and the presenters as we move through the agenda. As we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the react icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button, not the wave or thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. They will not see the chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you will need to go to the participant section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat us. We're here for support. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Uh, Welcome everyone to the January 28th, 2025 Zoning Development and Housing Committee meeting for Community Board 8. Very happy to see we have a full house. My name is Ed Hartzog. I'm co-chair, along with my other co-chair, Anthony Cohn, and my other co-chair, Elizabeth Ashby. As you can tell from the agenda, this is an informational presentation by Lenox Hill Hospital. I know there's a lot of interest. We all know there's a lot of interest. We want to let you know there will be a ULURP on this in March, we believe, after the application has been certified by the Department of City Planning. This is simply an informational presentation by the hospital. We know everyone has a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts. We're trying to think of time management this evening. We're going to have the presentation by Lenox Hill. We will ask that those of you in the community focus your questions, questions only, please, to the presenters. We'll give you about a minute to do that. We do have a lot of folks, as you can tell, and we're trying to get out of here in, roughly 2.5 hours or so if we can. Again, we have a ULURP on this later on, so please do not feel as if you won't be heard because goodness knows you will. But again, this is just an informational presentation. And appreciate your cooperation in terms of time management and focusing questions on things that other speakers haven't said, if you may. Anyway, I will turn it over to my co-chair, Anthony, to introduce our guest for the evening, and leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Once again, a reminder. Okay, hang on one second. Okay. As Ed said, this is an informational. I'll turn off my phone in a minute. And this is an informational session. We are going to see what it is that the Northwell Lenox Hill team has come up with. I want to remind everyone that we are all adults here, I hope, and I hope we all behave in a manner that will not embarrass us in front of our parents. And the other
Only
thing,
about 10.
yeah, the other thing is to reiterate that we are going to go with, since there are so many of us here, a minute for members of the public each. And depending on how long that runs, we're going to try and limit community board members, committee members to 2 minutes each. All of the comments Ed made are absolutely true. And so I think we can go ahead. If you guys are ready over there in
Just for the
Lenox Hill.
Yeah, really quickly, Anthony. We do have a capacity in this
Ooh,
room.
yeah.
Yeah, we have a capacity in this room of 300 people. So if you are not planning to raise your hand at any point to speak, you can actually go over to our YouTube channel and check out the YouTube and watch it and follow along live there. You do not need to be in the Zoom room so that we can make sure that we can let everybody in. So again, I would encourage you to go to our website or any of our social medias. You'll find the YouTube link there and watch the meeting there if you do not plan to speak or participate any other way than just watching.
And to follow up on that, and as Will and I had discussed before, right now we're sort of teetering on the edge, but if we have people in the waiting room after you've spoken, you can certainly go out of the meeting to let some others in and watch on YouTube. Okay, so if our presenters are ready, we're ready for you, I think. I think you have to unmute somebody. There you go.
Good evening, Anthony. Can you hear us?
Certainly.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So good evening to all. My name is Daniel Baker. I am an emergency physician, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of Lenox Hill Hospital. I'd like to say thank you to Valerie Mason, the board chair, our co-chairs of the committee, all of the Community 8 board members, and the members of the community who took time to be with us tonight. We are grateful for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. So just as an agenda, we'll be going on an introduction of why we're here. We'll go through project updates since we have last spoke together. We'll talk a bit about the exterior building design, which is conceptual at this point. We will go through zoning actions, a bit on the DEIS overview, and then we'll end with, I think, what everybody is looking for is the question and answer session. So a bit about why we're here. For generations, Lenox Hill has stood as a beacon of hope and healing in this community. We've witnessed countless medical breakthroughs within these walls. We've welcomed new lives in this world and comforted those nearing their end. But as the needs of our community evolve and medical advancements continue at a rapid pace, so too must Lenox Hill. Our current facilities, while steeped in history, are increasingly challenged to meet the demands of 21st century medicine. That's why we're embarking on this journey to renew Lenox Hill Hospital. It's about reaffirming our unwavering commitment to our mission, to improve the health and quality of life for the communities we serve through world-class service and patient-centered care. This project will enable us to deliver on that promise more effectively than ever before. we're here because of the services that we provide to the community. The 5,000 team members that we employ at Lenox Hill who come into this building each and every day to be able to offer the clinical care that is so paramount to the future of what we will do. We are very, very proud, again, of the work that happens within our hospital, around our hospital, and outside in our community. We're proud of the myriad of services that we're able to provide, whether orthopedic surgery, cardiothoracic surgery, behavioral health, and a myriad of others that really form the building blocks of our hospital design of the future and are the building blocks of our renewal project that make this so important and why we must continue to look forward to achieving this. We're also here because of what I mentioned before and the idea that our infrastructure is in need of improvement. Lenox Hill has been serving this community for over 160 years, and we're very proud of that fact. We've watched the community grow up around us, and we've been a lively part of that growth. But we last had a major infrastructure component in around 60 years ago. And it's time that we once again renew ourselves for the future. It's important that we think about what that future entails, the importance of single-bedded rooms to patient outcomes, privacy, respect, the importance of state-of-the-art operating rooms to make certain that we're on the clinical forefront of our medicine and our surgical departments, and the importance of being better community neighbors across our block, how we incorporate a patient-centric approach to what we do, bringing things like our ambulances inside our facilities so they have faster emergency care. We're also here because of the aspect of what we do within our community. We offer a myriad of services of which I'm very, very proud. Again, a hospital is larger than the building in which we serve. It's part and a stalwart member of the Upper East Side and the community. We offer multiple free services, whether that's from flu shots and vaccinations, the important aspect of screening so that we can get to diseases upstream before they cause problems. We have partnerships with schools, thinking about the pipeline of the future careers and those individuals in New York City, how they're going to continue to make an impact in healthcare. We have partnerships with other community organizations such as the Carter Burden Network, which is a center for the aging, looking at really both ends and the importance of the largeness of the community that we have. We are anchored in our healthcare organization, that of Northwell Health, and really this more global approach to New York City and what we can do as a community and how we continue to push this together. So this renewal isn't just about constructing a new building. It's about reimagining healthcare delivery for the 21st century and beyond. It's about creating an environment that empowers our dedicated staff to provide the highest quality of care, that leverages cutting-edge technology, and puts the patient experience at the forefront of everything we do. The importance of the aspect of those single-bedded rooms, again, for the outcome of the patient, building care to the patient, letting loved ones be with the patient, and really a much more holistic approach to medicine as it continues to evolve as an entity. The importance, again, of the state-of-the-art operating rooms, while we're very proud of 6 of our departments that are ranked in the top 50 in the United States by US News and World Report, we need to continue to modernize to stay on that clinical edge, to make certain we have the most modern technology, again, right here for you on the Upper East Side. Thinking about the some 55,000 individuals that use our emergency department on a regular basis, that come into our emergency department yearly, that need that care, again, right at the very minute. How can we do that better by improving the experience of actually having private rooms for them to be in, a faster delivery of emergency care, again, with the ambulances, and how do we really give our team members the ability to respond in the ways that they need and to offer the care that they know they can do. There's a lot of things that are very important in this project, and again, we've spoken on many of them. It's really about building a future where healthcare is more innovative, accessible, and equally compassionate. So a little bit about our project development. We've been talking about this project over the course of many years, as you can see here. The waterfall of our first starting out to the community in 2019 with our initial proposal, speaking at the community board at that time, developing what was then the task force with Gail Brewer and Keith Powers, and then circling back in to take in that powerful feedback that we heard from the community to see what could we do differently in our design. We are all aware of the pandemic that we faced together as a community and the impact that Lenox Hill had here in New York City because of it. That, however, expanded a little bit the timeline for our project. As we all came out of COVID, we started to once again go around and talk to individuals about the nature of the project, speaking with many elected officials, many of our community organizations, and then eventually getting again in front of the community board and through the Department of City Planning a scoping hearing. And over the past year or so, we've really been working on our application development so that we can get us to today in 2025 when we're able and ready to file. So just to go through the evolution of this project, I think it's important because it really has changed, and it has changed through the feedback and the voices that you have all spoken to. The diagram on the left is our initial proposal from 2019. It has a height of some 516 feet. It was a skinnier tower on the Lexington side with an associated residential component on the Park Avenue side. And through the task force that we had and listening to what you had to have as concerns about this project, we regrouped, understanding that height was an important factor and equally understanding that residential component was not deemed an appropriate part of this project. So in 2023, we came back with another proposal that we put forward to the community. This has reduced the height some 80 feet on Lexington Avenue to 436 feet. And gone is the residential component that, again, we were asked to eliminate. So where are we today? Since we last met, we've been working in partnership with the Department of City Planning to explore opportunities for some optionality. How can we continue to listen to some of the suggestions that you all have put forward and some of the concerns that you equally have put forward? As of January in 2025, we have officially filed our land use application, and the application is available currently on the zoning applications portal. There was a pre-notice of certification that was sent out. And as far as our next steps, in addition to being with you all tonight, our DEIS will go public on January 31st, so just at the end of this week. And then our target certification is for February 3rd, again of 2025. So wanted to talk a little bit about what's new in our proposal and what are the changes since we were last together. Many of the things, again, that continue to resonate and continue to come forth were about height and its impact and the importance of thinking, how can we continuously look at that reduction? And there were many of you and many different organizations that said, we would really appreciate it if you can push the build further across the block that you currently sit upon. There were a couple of challenges with that. First is an operational challenge, because importantly, we're committed to keeping our hospital fully operational throughout our construction. We're committed to the clinical services that we spoke about. We're committed to our community and the patients, the some 150,000 that seek our care annually throughout this process. The other was that we needed to work with the Department of City Planning to assure that optionality that we present to you would be allowed by them and equally supported by them in the certification process. So we're coming forth tonight with a new application that does show exactly that, options. We have two options. The option on the left is the proposal as it stood in 2023, which has the Lexington Avenue height at 436 feet and the mid-block height at 195 feet. The new option, the option on the right, was our attempt at, again, listening to how can we further reduce the height and how can we push some of the build into further across the block, entering into the mid-block portion of our facilities. This has been able to reduce the height and is now under 400 feet, sitting at 395 feet at Lexington Avenue side, and now at 360 of a limited portion of the mid-block. We're very hopeful that this is a response to, again, the different voices that we heard in the community through the different partnerships and listening that we've been attempting. and looking equally for your feedback on it. It's important to equally talk about what's the same. Both of these options and both of these proposals are still allowing for the full clinical program that we had intended from the start. We are still intending 475 beds, which is now 475 rooms. That's a change from the 450 beds that we currently use on a regular basis, the majority of which are in shared rooms rather than in single beds. Regulation and the future of healthcare really dictate that single-bedded rooms are the better option for our patients, for our caregivers, and really for their loved ones. So that portion, again, in both options will remain at 475. You'll see that there is a modest increase in the number of our ORs from 25 to 30. We have a larger increase in the total number of our ambulance in our emergency department spaces. And again, this is needed for the 55,000 people who come in and use our space. Unfortunately, just as I was on the way here today, passing through the emergency department, we see people who need to be in a private space who are in hallways because of the sheer volume of patients that we see on a daily basis. It lacks the respect that they deserve, and it lacks the ability for us to really provide the care at the level that we would like to provide. We're going to internalize the ambulance bays, again, being very patient-focused, getting patients for emergency care quicker to the emergency department, decreasing the vehicular traffic that's on 77th and the congestion that's there, and equally allowing us to better respond to the unfortunate mass events that we've seen increase over the past decade. We see some changes in our imaging, as well as in our labor and delivery recovery rooms. And then importantly, the last piece is that we are increasing the number of loading bays, which we call our material handling center bays. That will get these off the street, reducing truck traffic, on 76, reducing the unfortunate congestion that we've caused on a daily basis due to the nature of the materials that we need in order to provide that world-class care that we do. Both options, option one and the new option, option two, can allow for this clinical programming that, again, is based in the services that we offer currently and plan to continue for generations to come. Our estimated project schedule, we have been able to change this through the new process. What was once 11 years has been reduced to 9. We understand that duration is an important factor, and we understand the impact that it has on the community. Equally, it has an impact on us, and as I said many times, we are well aligned and want to do this project as fast as possible for all involved, including our team members and our patients. Option one has an approximate 6-year impact of exterior construction, which will have a combination of exterior and interior, and then a 3-year component of interior-only construction. Option two is slightly different. It has a 6.5-year component of an exterior and combined exterior-interior construction, and a 2.5-year component of interior construction. The difference in these options is based on the way that we need to move across the block in order to be able to build the second option. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tomas Roussant, our lead architect.
Thank you, Dr. Baker, and good evening, Community Board 8. We wanted to start with the ground floor plan to remind you of where the project is and how it will work urbanistically to improve the streetscape. I want to point out that although there are 2 zoning proposals in the LUA, this floor plan is common to both proposals. I'd also like to remind you that new construction is on the eastern side of the hospital block, with renovations to existing buildings on the western portion of the hospital block at the street level. Starting on the corner of Lexington and 76, let's take a walk around the block, moving north and going counterclockwise. On the corner is the main hospital entrance, locating the busiest entry to the hospital for the first time on the wider avenue with more generous sidewalks. Moving north, there will be a small retail space related to healthcare and wellness. Next, on Lexington, a walk-in entry to the ER to receive patients coming by foot from the subway or from a drop-off on Lexington. On the corner is a proposed newly accessible entry to the south platform of the 6 train with a much more generous staircase and the ability to get you in an accessible route all the way down to the platform. Moving down 77th Street for the first time, there will be a dedicated staff entrance. And then in the mid-block, as Dr. Baker mentioned, a renovation to the existing building to allow all ambulances to come off the street. These things taken together, the separating of dedicated entries by purpose and moving the subway entry into the property line will dramatically improve pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Moving to Park Avenue, we intend to have an entry dedicated to our mother-baby birthing center. Otherwise, the Park Avenue facades remain generally as they are today. And lastly, moving down 76th Street, again, as Dr. Baker mentioned, we will renovate the existing buildings to remove all vehicular traffic related to deliveries and waste removal from the street, again, improving vehicular traffic flow and the pedestrian experience. Now, before we advance to the next slide, I just want to explain what you will be seeing. We will show you an illustrative perspective of the proposed project in its detailed existing context, looking down Lexington. We will show you that image with concepts for both zoning envelopes, and then compare them side by side. Then we will look at the building from different sides to give you a clear understanding of the building massing under each zoning envelope. And lastly, we will explain our current intentions for the material, color, and character of the building. So you can go to the next one now. So here's the view of the project with zoning option 1. This is the taller proposal that does not put bulk in the mid-block. And here's the same view with zoning option 2. This allows for a lower project, but adds bulk to the mid-block. And here they are side by side for comparison. Now let's focus on each side of the project. We'll be looking at the building from an elevated position above some rooftops, so we can demonstrate the variations of the two zoning envelopes very clearly. Here's the view from 76th Street, the south elevation. This view is the very best way to understand the two zoning concepts. Option 2 on the right builds in the mid-block and can therefore accommodate the program with fewer floors. Option 1 on the left takes the mid-block program and puts it on top of the building, thus a taller building. Here's the view from Lexington, the east elevation. Here it's very evident, you can clearly see the height comparison. And here is the view from Park Avenue. And now let's consider our intentions with regard to material, color, and character. On the left is the elevation of zoning option 1, and we're pulling from it a detail of the facade. We have created an overall composition of discrete volumes separated by deep indentations meant to be in deep shadow. We do this to break up the massing of the building and create facade dimensions and forms more in keeping with contemporary residential architecture. We think the best residential architecture on the Upper East Side, whether historic or contemporary, has facades of significant depth, allowing a rich shadow play over the surface. That is our intention here too. We would like the building to evoke the use of limestone on significant buildings of the Upper East Side. Historic residential buildings often change from brick to limestone as they address the street. And historic churches, synagogues, Carnegie libraries, and museums convey their public focus by deploying limestone. And we want the other materials, aside from the limestone, whether metal or masonry, to pick up on the rich brown and red tones of Upper East Side brick. And now to an explanation of the land use actions with Nick Williams of Fried Frank.
Thank you, Tomas. I'm Nick Williams with Fried Frank. We're land use counsel to Lenox Hill Hospital on this application. I'm going to walk through the zoning actions that are proposed in the application that was filed in December to facilitate the proposed project. The actions consist of a zoning map amendment, amendments to zoning text, and a special permit authorization and certification with respect to the proposed hospital and associated subway station improvements. The set of zoning changes and project-specific approvals follows the approach of prior approvals for the expansion of healthcare institutions. And the proposed actions would allow expansion of the hospital within its current footprint in a manner that is consistent with the historic land use at this site and address modern healthcare space needs. This slide illustrates the current and proposed zoning districts of the hospital property, which is outlined in red. The zoning district boundaries are shown in the darker black lines. The blue shading indicates special purpose districts, and the red shading shows a limited height district. The block is currently mapped in 3 zoning districts. On Park Avenue, there is an R10 district within the Special Park Improvement District, which permits a base floor area ratio of 10 FAR for hospital use. The mid-block is in an R8B district, which permits 5.1 FAR for hospital use. And the Lexington Avenue frontage is in a C18X district, which permits 9 FAR for hospital use. The proposed amendment on the right in blue would map a C18 district at the mid-block and a C19 district on Lexington Avenue. Both of these districts permit a base of 10 FAR for hospital use, and the map amendment would therefore establish 10 FAR for hospital use across the block. This slide lists the proposed amendments to the zoning resolution. The primary proposal is a new special permit mechanism under which City Planning Commission would be able to grant floor area bonuses and modify bulk controls in order to facilitate the expansion of an existing hospital, as is proposed here. In connection with the new special permit text, additional amendments would allow an existing transit improvement bonus mechanism to be utilized in connection with the special permit, and would confirm that floor area calculations may take into account the lot area of the site in the Special Park Improvement District. Finally, as a technical matter, the rezoned areas would be mapped as a mandatory inclusionary housing area. The proposed special permit would allow the hospital project to proceed in accordance with zoning plans that are filed with the land use application. For each of the 2 options, the special permit would allow a floor area increase and modification of height and other building form regulations to reflect the proposed configurations. The proposed floor area bonus consists of a 2 FAR increase in connection with the enlargement for hospital use. This is a 20% increase over the base maximum 10 FAR. And the additional 0.5 FAR would be tied to the proposed transit improvements, resulting in a total bonus of 2.5 FAR and a total floor area of 12.5 FAR. The proposed zoning plans establish maximum envelopes for each option, which are the outer limits of potential construction. And the plans detail the modifications of bulk controls necessary for each option. I'll show examples of this on the following slides. First, this is the proposed envelope for option 1, shown in a 3-dimensional axonometric diagram. This is a view looking northeast from the intersection of Park Avenue and 76th Street. The envelope is shown in a dark black line, and the building is shown illustratively within the envelope. This envelope shows a total height of 436 feet for the new building on Lexington Avenue, with a base height of 195 feet below. This height includes rooftop mechanicals, which are shown within the envelope. On the western portion of the block, which is on the left of this image, the envelope would establish maximum heights that are lower than are permitted under current zoning, which reflect the existing conditions to remain on that portion of the block. This slide shows excerpts of section diagrams that are included in the technical drawing set. Section diagrams show cuts through the building. The diagram on the left shows a cut in the east-west direction with the new building on Lexington Avenue shown illustratively on the right in dark gray and the existing building portions in light gray. The middle diagram is a section cut in a north-south direction through the new building on Lexington Avenue. And the diagram on the left, on the far right, is a section cut in a north-south direction at the mid-block. In each case, the 76th Street frontage is on the right-hand side of these diagrams. The diagrams show the modifications of bulk regulations necessary for option 1, in particular with respect to the street wall setback and sky exposure plan regulations in the C19 and C18 districts. This slide shows the proposed envelope for option 2. The set of filed zoning plans for option 2 is at the same level of detail as option 1. The difference is in the height of the volume on Lexington Avenue and at the mid-block. As described earlier, the proposed height of option 2 is 395 feet on Lexington Avenue, and 365 feet at the mid-block on 76th Street. This envelope would accommodate the same amount of floor area at 12.5 FAR as option 1. These are excerpts of the section diagrams for option 2, which again are in the same form and level of detail as for option 1. The diagram on the left shows a section cut in the east-west direction with the newer building with Lexington Avenue on the right. The diagram in the middle is a section cut in the north-south direction at the Lexington Avenue frontage, and the diagram on the far right is a north-south cut through the mid-block of the site, which shows the taller mid-block portion for option 2. Finally, there are 2 actions proposed in connection with the proposed transit improvements at the northeast corner of the site. The first is a certification with respect to an easement volume that will be granted to the MTA in connection with the project. And the second is an authorization for a floor area bonus of 0.5 FAR in connection with the construction of proposed improvements within this volume. As Tomas mentioned, the improvements consist of a new 15.5-foot wide stair located on the hospital property as a replacement of existing stairs in the public sidewalk, a new elevator within the property line that provides ADA compliant access from street level to the mezzanine, and a ramp that provides ADA compliant access within the station from the mezzanine level to the platform level. This diagram shows the proposed improvements at street level. The stair is at the top of the yellow area within the property line, wrapping around the elevator. And an approximately 700 square foot area on the site would be left open for pedestrian circulation in front of this entrance, protected by portions of the building above. That concludes the summary of the zoning actions. I will now turn the presentation to Lisa Lau of AKRF.
Thanks, Nick. I'm Lisa Lau with AKRF. We're the environmental consultants responsible for preparing the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS. The proposed actions are subject to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, implemented through the city's environmental review process, SEQR with a C. The EIS is the responsibility of the lead agency, the Department of City Planning, which determines the contents of the EIS and involves other city agencies, including the city departments of Environmental Protection, Transportation, Parks, and the Landmarks Preservation Commission. As noted earlier, the program, project population, staff, patients, and visitors, site access, zoning actions, and overall construction duration would be the same for both options. The rigorous analysis of options 1 and 2, conducted in accordance with the SEQR technical manual, will be presented in the DEIS, expected to be posted within the next week. It is expected that the proposed project would result in significant adverse impacts in only 2 areas: shadows and temporary construction noise. It would not result in any significant adverse impacts to all of the remaining SEQR technical areas, including land use, zoning, and public policy, community facilities and services, socioeconomic conditions, open space, historic and cultural resources, urban design and visual resources, natural resources, hazardous materials, water and sewer infrastructure, solid waste and sanitation services, energy, transportation, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, and climate change, noise, public health, and neighborhood character. Next slide, please. The proposed project would be built on what is shown as projected development site 1 on this figure on the upper right. The EIS will also consider the as-of-right development of an approximately 46,000 gross square foot, 6-story, 75-foot tall building to house hospital support functions at 111-115 East 77th Street between Lexington and Park Avenues, which is shown as projected development site 1A on the upper right slide of the slide. Options 1 and 2 are expected to result in significant adverse shadow impacts to the tree canopy and plantings in the 8th Church of Christ Scientist Garden, located on the north side of East 77th Street in the spring, summer, and fall. The garden's pictured on the lower right-hand corner of the slide. The garden is mostly shaded in existing conditions, with some low-level and dappled sunlight filtered through shade-tolerant trees, and the garden currently includes shade-tolerant perennial plants. An alternative to reduce the shadow impact has been assessed, but virtually any development on either projected development site 1 or 1A that would be taller than the existing buildings would cause significant adverse shadow impacts on the March 21st, September 21st seeker analysis day. Potential mitigation measures are being explored, and if no mitigation measures are identified, there will be unavoidable adverse shadow impacts to the garden's vegetation. With both options 1 and 2, the proposed project's construction activities would result in temporary significant adverse impacts related to noise at receptors surrounding the proposed construction work area. Specifically, at buildings across East 76th Street on the north facades, at the building immediately east of projected development site 1A on the west and south facades facing construction work areas, and some buildings along East 78th Street whose south facades are adjacent to construction on development site 1A. I want to note that the greatest levels of construction noise would not persist throughout construction. No significant adverse noise impacts are predicted to occur along or across Park Avenue or Lexington Avenue. At these locations, construction would produce noise level increases that would be noticeable and potentially intrusive during the most noise-intensive nearby construction activities. However, the predicted maximum levels would not persist throughout construction, and the noise levels would fluctuate over the course of the construction period. In addition, once the building is enclosed, construction noise levels at nearby areas would be greatly diminished. Construction would typically occur during weekday daytime hours and would therefore not produce noise during nighttime hours when residents would be most sensitive to noise. Further, construction would comply with New York City Noise Control Code regulations, and specific noise control measures would be incorporated into noise mitigation plans required under the code. While not expected to be frequent, weekend or night work may also be occasionally required for certain construction activities. Appropriate work permits from the Department of Buildings would be obtained for any necessary work outside of normal construction hours. The number of workers and pieces of equipment in operation for night or weekend work would typically be limited to those needed just to complete that particular authorized task. Therefore, the level of activity for any weekend or night work would be less than that of a normal work day. Mitigation measures to control noise at the receptors predicted to experience significant adverse impacts would also be offered during construction of the project. These measures could include the installation of storm windows and/or air conditioners for impacted facades. However, temporary significant adverse noise impacts predicted to occur at some receptors would be only partially mitigated. Upon certification by the City Planning Commission, the DEIS will be available for public review and comment. A public hearing will be held on the DEIS in conjunction with the ULURP hearing, and all interested parties will have the opportunity to submit oral and written comments. The record will remain open for 10 days after the public hearing to allow additional written comments on the DEIS, and a final EIS will be prepared that will include responses to comments on the DEIS along with any revisions to the technical analyses. Thank you for your time tonight. I will now turn the presentation back to Dr. Baker.
Thank you, Lisa. And equally thank you to Tomas and to Nick for their expertise on this project. It takes an incredible group of people to make certain that this project is a success, and we have many of them in the room tonight, and so would like to thank them for, again, their compassion, their commitment, and their dedication to really improving the lives of our patients and maintaining, again, the clinical services that we have done over the past 160 years for future generations. It's our intent tonight to answer questions that you have as transparently as possible, and there are many of us in the room with the intent to do that. So as questions come up, we'll likely be calling on some of our other individuals to make certain that we can get you the best answer possible to those questions. So thank you tonight for your attention, and looking forward to hearing the questions that you have to put forward.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That was an interesting presentation, and I think we're going to start going to questions. And if members of the public could go ahead and use the raise hand function in order to line up, and Will or Kevin are going to time everyone 1 minute. So we'll just start putting people in order. So first up appears to be Lois Utley.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm Lois Utley, a health equity advocate based in Upper Manhattan, and I'm working with the committee to protect our Lenox Hill neighborhood. I've noted previously that this project would worsen health inequity by adding hospital capacity in an area of New York that already has ample capacity, instead of in parts of the city that lack enough hospital beds. But tonight I'd like to focus on the potential impact of this project on affordability. Lenox Hill Hospital's private and commercial insurance prices are more than 300% of the Medicare rate. That's among the highest hospital prices in Manhattan. Here's my question. With affordability a major concern for many New Yorkers today, how can you make your prices more affordable when you're going to be paying debt service on a $2 billion price tag for this project?
Thank you for that question. And certainly, our healthcare pricing and costs are complex and need a far longer conversation than we'd be able to have this evening. But it's an appropriate thing that we need to discuss. And the $2 billion redevelopment is not just a financial investment; it's an investment in the future of healthcare in Manhattan and the future in healthcare on the Upper East Side. One that we feel is paramount to continue the support of our healthcare sciences and really pushing the innovation that we continue to offer to all of New Yorkers. While debt service is certainly a consideration, we are committed to managing these financial responsibilities and committed without passing unnecessary costs on to our patients. So this includes exploring philanthropic support, operational efficiencies, and partnerships to ensure that affordability really remains a priority. It's been a component of our mission to care for those regardless of the ability to pay. And that will continue to be a component of our mission in this build and after.
Okay. Thank you for the question. And Valerie, Valerie Mason, our board chair, wants to jump the line, and I guess we'll have to let her.
Okay, I don't want to take too much time because it's really for the public. I just wanted to welcome everybody here tonight and just say that I'm going to ask our staff members to just put up on the side how the ULIP really works. Tonight is not part of the public hearing process. And while we have a huge group that's tuning in, you can see how the process will work. And if this project is pre-certified by the City Planning Commission on February 3rd, Community Board 8 will have 60 days to hold a public hearing on the project. And so I would just ask everyone to come to the website and check our schedule to see when the public hearing will be. And with that, I will step out and let the questions continue. Thank you, everyone, tonight for your participation. Thanks, Anthony.
You're quite welcome. Okay, next we have Leah. If you could give us your surname and actually tell us where you live.
Hi, it's Leah Hanlon, and I'm on the Upper East Side. Could you tell me, as an Upper East Sider, whether Upper East Siders on Medicare Advantage or Medicaid or whatever low reimbursement plans might exist in the future will have the very same access to your new private rooms as wealthy medical tourists from elsewhere?
Absolutely. It's a great question. I'm sure that this is going to come up in multiple times. So I'd just like to be clear in my answer. The answer is yes. The modernization of Lenox Hill is not about catering to any one particular group of individuals. It's about bringing our facilities up to the highest standard to serve the diverse community that we already do serve. And this includes everyone on the Upper East Side, including those on Medicare, those on Medicaid, and those with limited or no insurance. So this is our unwavering commitment and assuring, again, the entire community has access to the best possible care right here on the Upper East Side.
Okay. Thank you. Good question. Andrew, fine.
I feel like I just hit the jackpot, actually, being this far up in the line. Thank you so much. I'd just like to voice my opposition to this entire project. I think the idea of inconveniencing residents of the Upper East Side for 9 years and putting them in perpetual shade forever for the benefit of 25 hospital beds is ludicrous. And I wish that Lenox Hill Hospital would withdraw this proposal altogether and really perhaps pursue a different location where there is a dearth of actual hospital beds. And the sacrifice for just a mere 25 hospital beds here just does not add up for me. I'm not sure it adds up for the community. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. That was a comment. Let's try and make our questions, even if we just kind of change our voice at the end of the statement. Sasha, I'm going to ask you to hold until we get through members of the public, since you are you keep your hand up. I just wouldn't call on you yet. Okay, Stephanie Reckler.
Thank you for the presentation. But I have a question. Your CEO, Michael Dowling, has publicly indicated that the hospital needs this plan to stay competitive in Manhattan. What does that mean? Competitive in terms of delivering the best healthcare, or competitive in terms of taking market share of full paying private patients from other hospitals? And why can't Northwell still be competitive if it is added facilities in underserved areas of the city? Please explain.
Thank you, Stephanie. Certainly staying competitive in Manhattan's landscape means several things for Lenox Hill Hospital. First and foremost, it means delivering the highest quality of care with the most advanced technology and treatments available. This project allows us to modernize our facilities and create an environment where our dedicated physicians, our dedicated nurses, and our dedicated staff can provide exceptional care. This includes the single-bedded rooms, which are essential for infection control and patient experience, and state-of-the-art operating rooms, again, equipped for the complex procedures that we perform each and every day. Certainly, developing facilities in other areas is a separate but equally important conversation, and one that Northwell Health is actively engaged in as part of our broader mission to provide high-quality healthcare across our entire service area.
Okay, thank you. And now we have Ruth Holzer.
Hi, thank you. I live at 800 Park Avenue, okay? And my question is about the maternity entrance on Park Avenue. Why can't the hospital do what New York Hospital did, which is have the maternity entrance as part of the hospital, okay? So it doesn't back up traffic onto Park Avenue. There are times when traffic is already really backed up on Park Avenue. Why should we have it even more so?
Again, thank you for the question. I think this is, again, something that we envision as being very special for mothers and their families that are coming to deliver in our hospital, and separating them from the individuals who are coming in who may be otherwise sick. Our maternal child health population of patients is a different population of patients in that regard. And we'd like to treat them differently from that perspective and respect that aspect of the care that they want to receive. We felt the best way of doing that was to separate the entrance and to put it away from where the majority of our patients would enter into our facility, equally away from where our staff would enter into the facility. It's something we think that is a way of really making certain that we can respect that community equally as a separate population of individuals who are using our facilities. We certainly understand your concern about congestion and don't have any intent on causing further congestion. We'll do everything that we can to make certain that we do not do that.
Okay, thank you. And now we have Rosemary Finelli.
I've stepped out, but I'll ask her question. What does putting a giant monstrosity in the middle of one of the most densely populated residential areas that's already massively overserved in every facet of healthcare, where you can basically walk for anything, even leg operations, you could walk home. Why are we want to build this right in the middle of it? And wouldn't it be better to find some space or maybe put it closer to some of the other 4 hospitals on the Upper East Side?
So we're committed to where our home is. Our home is on the Upper East Side, and it resides between 77th and 76th and Park Avenue and Lexington Avenue, even before Park Avenue was Park Avenue. So our commitment, again, is to the 150,000 patients who seek us at this location on a regular basis, and for those who in the future are going to continue to seek our clinical services exactly where we stand. So we are fully committed to continuing to operate where we have for the past generations in order to do so for the future.
Okay, that's an answer. Raina McNutt.
Hello, this is Raina and Lily. We are at 136 East 76th, and we have 2 apartments with windows that face the hospital, and we enjoy our view as it is now, as everyone else does. Now, my question is, you say that there are currently people in beds in hallways, that you don't have room for them now. And from my understanding, how are you going to fit those people in rooms, singular rooms, instead of shared rooms? I'm a public health major. I just graduated college for public health and psychology. I learned stuff like this, where being around other people who maybe have the same, isolating people by their disease, by what their sickness is, by how contagious they are. And I know that we all have thoughts post-COVID about how to contain people into individual rooms. Is that 100% correct for treating patients? Are you going to have room for those people who are currently in the hallway to be in singular rooms after?
So first and foremost, congratulations on your graduation. I'm sure that took an extraordinary amount of work. And we need future individuals such as yourself affecting healthcare policy. The hallway beds that I was speaking of are particularly in the emergency department, not within the hallways of the hospital upstairs in our inpatient rooms. And that is because of the fact that we don't have the requisite number of treatment spaces. And we're not alone in that aspect across the United States, particularly with emergency department crowding. We're very proud, though, of the efficiency that we're able to maintain. And the pure fact is that patients aren't alone. They're with their loved ones who need a private space to be able to heal and to be able to go through this process together. They need to be able to have the care brought to them in those beds rather than having to navigate around somebody else in the room with them. They deserve to be able to have the respect of their own bathroom, their own closet, their own space, again, to be able to heal within the confines of those they want present with them, not within the confines of those we happen to put in the room with them. So we know that this is better. We have seen this evolve. We have seen this evolve away from wards, which I'm certainly you are well versed in based on your degree, how the evolution into shared private or shared semi-private rooms happen. And now we are in the evolution again to move into single bedded rooms. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. That was a good question. I just wanted to actually interject a question right now since we mentioned emergency rooms. I want to make the observation that not everyone comes to the emergency department by ambulance. In fact, on all occasions in which I have gone to emergency rooms, I've either arrived on foot or, in the case of when I was at Lenox Hill many years ago, well, on foot or by car. So what drove the decision to put the emergency department on the second floor. And as an emergency physician, Dr. Baker, you're probably well equipped to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you for that question. There's a multitude of factors that really chose that. You're absolutely right that the majority of patients who actually come into any emergency department come in on their own accord rather than through ambulances. But we have to understand that there is a dichotomy of how people arrive. And in order to both accommodate something like an ambulance bay, in order to be able to bring this internally and to make certain that we don't continue to creep higher and higher and higher as we could, we had to decide to make the emergency department on the second floor. We have seen this done very, very well. It's done very well at NYU. This is what they did when they were faced with Hurricane Sandy, and they renovated throughout that time period. They placed their emergency department on a higher floor, and they maintained it on a higher floor. We have seen this across multiple institutions. So again, as an emergency physician, I know that we can provide the best care in this regard, and we'll make certain that we continue to do so.
Okay, so I'm just gonna torture you just a second longer. The reason basically has to do with there not being enough ground floor space to accommodate everything you want on the ground floor, ideally.
I would say it's more complicated than that. The reason is based on how we need to fit all of our clinical services within the building, that's where it fit best.
Okay, thank you. Sage Harris. You are unmuted, but inaudible.
Sage, make sure you don't have a mute on your microphone. Otherwise, we're going to have to move past you.
We're going to have to move on. Okay, let's move on. We can always come back to you. Oliver Goldstein.
Thank you. A 9-year construction project is a lot to ask of your neighbors and the community. I'm sure you've tried to, compress it. You mentioned that obviously that would presumably in many ways be in your interest, but I'm just wondering, and I know that you're trying to keep the existing hospital running, that adds the timeline, but it's just an enormous ask and an enormous burden. And I'm wondering if you could just help us understand why this is going to take 9 years and whether in shrinking it, you would be able to reduce that burden and shrinking the space that you're trying to build.
Yeah, so first of all, again, understanding the community's concern regarding the duration and impact of the construction period. So I understand that aspect. And like I said before, we're well aligned in trying to compress that and to compress it further. It's certainly a complex mechanism that creates the duration. So I'm calling in a friend and colleague of mine, Jonathan Cogswell, to help me answer this question for you.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. So as we have spent significant time through this process working with our partners from Consigli Construction, who are experts at large-scale developments in dense urban environments. We've really been looking at every way possible that we can condense the schedule of this project. A lot of the time frame that you're hearing talked about relates to the phasing of the project over time, which is part of the reason why we wanted to break up during our presentation before the concept of exterior to interior construction. When we look at that 6 years of exterior construction, it will be in portions of that 6 years that there will be significant exterior construction, and then it will improve over that period of time as we enclose the building. But due to the phasing, there really is not, that we have found at this point, a way to condense that schedule further. When we get to the end of that 6 years and move on to the remaining 3 years, all of that work will be similar to what we do at the hospital today. Construction within the building that has little to no impact on the exterior community of the building.
Okay, thank you. Let's try Sage Harris again. Unmuted. Ah. You are audible, but we're not getting it. Okay, Brian, let's go to Brian Verona.
Hey, thank you. Look, I'm a neighbor on 78th Street. You've solicited some input from us, but we've been ghosted ever since. I'm not sure who option A and option B responds to. The objection is obviously on the 2.0 FAR addition. Regardless of all that, we had a project, a commercial project on 77th and 78th Street that was less than 5% in terms of budget, took 4 years and completely overwhelmed the neighborhood. And by overwhelming, I mean, and I'd like you to address how you propose to mitigate this. There was truck rolls, there was idling trucks, there was workers everywhere. The food establishments were completely overwhelmed. There was smoking, cigarette butts, marijuana, just an unbelievable amount of noise for an extended period of time. Your project is 20 times larger, will last 3x as long. How do you propose to mitigate any of these issues of this much smaller project? Thank you.
Thank you.
I should have stayed. Sorry. So as I spoke of earlier, in working with our friends at Consigli Construction, who we're currently working with on another project, we have spent an inordinate amount of time very focused on how we manage our site from an external perspective. We have a very large push to cleanliness, a very large push to controlling our contractors, how our contractors engage with the outside, providing them facilities within the construction site in order to be able to take their breaks, in order to eat their lunches, et cetera, so that they're not as invasive as some construction workers are in other projects. We do, I believe, go above and beyond to really provide facilities to these workers so that they can have that downtime during their day, but within our footprint, in order to not overburden the surrounding neighborhood. And we will continue to do that within this project, and that will be one of our focuses as we go through this.
Okay, thank you. Just another comment. Excuse me, another comment. And that is that after a certain point in construction, and actually even from the very beginning, and this is the experience of someone who lives next door to an active construction site right now, and is the noise from the materials hoist. And the placement of materials hoists, I guess the best way to describe it is that most projects do not concern themselves with the noise to the neighbors, and that noise continues even after the building is enclosed until the actual elevators are commissioned and approved by the Department of Buildings. So I would urge you all to think seriously and perhaps to consult or at least to speak to your neighbors about the location of the materials hoists. It's hard enough to build in New York City, but it's enough of an inconvenience without having noise from before 7 till 6 every night because of the hoist. Okay, Andrew Gaspar.
Dr. Baker, as I think you know, I represent a large group of your neighbors who are vehemently opposed to the plans you're presenting tonight. We have a very large group. We have over 6,000 signatures on a petition against the proposed expansion. Last night, we sent out an email that was opened by over 2,000 of our neighbors. And from people who signed up to a zoning meeting tonight, many of whom have 2 and 3 people in the room, you can tell that there is overwhelming interest and opposition to it. We are supported by a coalition of preservationist civic groups and local businesses and clergy, all of whom object to a plan that we think over 9 years and forever thereafter will destroy a successful, peaceful neighborhood, not for medical purposes, but for corporate market share and ego. This outside project is really not wanted here. It does not fit here, but it is desperately needed in other parts of Manhattan and other boroughs where you can make a tremendous contribution to a community rather than lead to its construction. You say that you've listened to us. We don't think you have. I ask you to listen to us now.
Thank you, Andrew.
Stop the application now.
Okay, that was also a comment. Sean G. About to be unmuted.
Yeah, hello?
No,
Yep, I think I'm unmuted now.
you are.
Hi there. Yeah, I live in the neighborhood on 77th and Lex, across the street from it, from the proposed redevelopment site. And, I'm just bringing up, one item of concern, and that is the EAS aspect for the review for the impacts to transportation. I think it was what was presented was kind of disingenuous as far as just a broad sweep declaring everything is meeting level 1 requirements for traffic, parking, transit, everything except for pedestrians. But all of those were based off of assumed conditions that were derived from either the 8 to 13-year-old census data, the 12-year-old FEIS for the Sloan Kettering on 74th Street, which is a completely different area, and the 2008 17-year-old HSS FEIS. It doesn't accurately represent the conditions, current conditions today in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Sean, I apologize. It felt disingenuous. It's not our intent. And certainly there will be a larger discussion about the EIS once it's made public through the certification process.
I guess the point he was trying to make is that since the scoping appeared not to say there would be any significant traffic impact on traffic and transportation, I think it's not that you meant to be disingenuous, but it seemed to those of us relatively uninitiated in transportation thought that that's not true. And the question that comes up as a consequence of it, and I'm sorry to keep coming in like this, no, I'm not, is a subway related question. Obviously, the construction that you are planning, excuse me, on the southbound subway will disrupt that station. Is there any sense that you have now of how long the southbound number 6 train will literally just sail past 77th Street?
So the MTA has made it very clear to us that we are not allowed to shut that subway station down. Period. It's part of their rules. We have to come up with a solution to be able to maintain that subway station as an active subway station as we do work within the station. The only time they will allow us to do any semblance of shutdown is when utility work is happening that affects the subway station, and that will be planned and completed by MTA staff.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's actually very helpful. All right, Walter Dean.
Thank you so much. Despite your continually stating you are working with the community, I'm not aware of your ever having contacted any neighboring buildings or your having meaningfully engaged with the committee to protect our Lenox Hill neighborhood. You have not listened to even one of your immediate neighbors, and the New York City officials in the decision-making process need to know that. Furthermore, you have not worked with any of the neighbors or neighboring buildings at your current 3rd Avenue construction site, which has 2 or 3 northbound lanes blocked every day and has created congestion down 3rd Avenue for more than half a mile on a daily basis. This horrific project is too large for our beautiful landmark neighborhood and has no redeeming architectural qualities. It does not take into account one neighboring residential or educational building or the historic context of the Upper East Side. We do not have the ability to endure the nightmare of your lack of community consideration or engagement that you have shown on 3rd Avenue. You are no longer the neighborhood hospital that many of us grew up with for generations, but a massive multi-billion-dollar corporation that has shown its arrogance during every bit of this process with its attempting to monetize
Thank
our
you.
home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now we have Stacy.
Hi, I live across from the proposed tower and or the mid-block option and propose 7 material handling bays on 76th Street. So yay. Little has changed from your initial proposal. You have not listened to the community and you have let the hospital crumble internally and externally for decades. You guys, that's on you. So how is it when the Northwell Health's Michael Dowling has said on numerous occasions, and I quote, "The hospital is only one part of the continuum of care. The hospital is not as centric anymore as it used to be. It's moving out, cancer, imaging, diagnostic treatment, and increasing surgeries. That's the way it's going. The hospital is not the center of the universe anymore," unquote. So how do you justify a 250% increase of zoning variances as reasonable? And have you considered keeping your existing zone footprint for the luxury maternity hospital you so desire, as well as upgraded ER and other local services you need? Or an alternate location for a large hospital facility that would actually and desperately be needed elsewhere?
So a couple of things. First and foremost, and I'd like to continue to address this, there are many words that are used to represent our patient population that I think are unfortunate in their use. We have a remarkably diverse patient population across socioeconomic status, across geography, and across New York City. Our community is larger than that of the Upper East Side, and the patients that we serve on a regular basis need to represent or continue to represent that. So we're not building for any one particular portion. We're building for all, and that needs to be understood. Those that are underserved, those that we continue to serve, the aspect of their insurance being irrelevant to their ability to come into Lenox Hill and receive services, including our maternal child and our mother baby units. So that's an important factor of understanding. Equally, understand that the conversation of healthcare disparities is a big one. It's a very important one. It will continue to be an important one. We're very proud of how we address those disparities locally. Again, through the diversity of our patient population, through the diversity of our geographic patient population, through the diversity of services, through the lens at which we look at these disparities, and our commitment. And equally very proud to be part of a larger healthcare organization that is beyond committed to the diversity, that is in every borough of New York City and beyond, and making certain that that healthcare is have far-reaching impact to all and those who need. Unfortunately, we cannot rebuild within the current zoning of our hospital. It is not possible for us to be able to do so. This is about really making certain that we address, again, all of the aspects of the clinical care that we provide, and that clinical care will require growth when it is renewed and when it is rebuilt.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
Andrew, can I jump in for a quick second? I'm sorry to jump in. For the Lenox Hill folks, I had a quick question, only for clarity purposes going forward. I've heard, I think, or maybe I misheard, the number of patients that you all serve. At one point, I think you said 55,000. At another time, I think I heard 155,000. I wasn't sure which it was, or maybe it was just mishearing by me. And to some of the questions I've heard, if we could address, I see so many hands, and I think some people may be asking this. I've heard it a couple of times already, and I will confess that many people I speak to, just in general about the East Side, what they refer to as Bedpan Alley, that's York Avenue. A former member of our board, Terry Slater, used to use that term all the time. My question, though, is if you could speak to something that I hear about on the island of Manhattan, just put aside the four boroughs that also need more hospitals, but what is going on in the industry that I hear from my colleagues in Community Board 6 and downtown and the Lower East Side? They are begging for hospitals on the island of Manhattan. And why is everyone closing down there? And why are they moving either somewhere else or disappearing? And if we could just address, or if you had any thought as to that, because I think that's a concern many people have, maybe not necessarily in the neighborhood, but in general, as to healthcare. Thank you.
So that was a lot.
Sorry.
Let me make certain that I can attempt to address the majority of that. As far as the numbers, you heard both numbers correct. We see 55,000 individuals in our emergency department alone. We touch 150,000 unique patients a year, which is a much greater impact throughout the hospital from the wealth of clinical services that we offer. All of our patients don't come through the emergency department, so this isn't something from a perspective of why those two numbers aren't synonymous. They're different in terms of the impact that we have. And while that's 150,000, that's not 150,000 episodes of care. There's a multiplier that's some 8 times that in terms of the unique aspects of care, the unique instances of care that we offer to that group of individuals and the patients, again, that we're committed to. That number continues to evolve and the number continues to change. Some move, some change, some go elsewhere. And then again, we have new patients who come in to meet. A couple different aspects.
Just for a second, that's 1.2 million touches a year.
Yeah.
8 times 150, 1.2 million.
We offer a lot of clinical services. There are a lot of appointments, whether it be through surgery, whether it be through mother-baby, whether it be through the outpatient care that we offer. It's really a complex environment that we offer. Secondly, I think, unfortunately, the term bedpan alley has grown in use, and I think it's a rather derogatory and unfortunate term, frankly. I think it does a disservice to the 5,000 team members who come here with one mission: to put the patient at the center of everything they do and to offer a state of healing. And I think we need to look at that differently, equally as we need to look at the Manhattan landscape differently. We sit in an incredibly unique and innovative slice of a portion of US healthcare that's continuing to drive change, to offer clinical services, to offer new services we haven't even heard of, and how we work together with our different partners in that is really important. And that proximity allows for many of that to happen, in addition to, again, offering services throughout the ecosystem of New York City and beyond. The piece about a downtown and most notably Beth Israel, that is a complex environment, again, that's governed predominantly by Mount Sinai and the Mount Sinai health system and the ability for them to maintain services there. Equally, we would have the outrage if we suddenly said we were closing tomorrow, and we should have that outrage if we suddenly said we're closing tomorrow. The impact would be equally felt as it is felt to Beth Israel. So these are, again, very complex pieces where we are, again, committed to maintaining where we are and what we offer to whom we serve, again, for the future.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks, Ed. Andrew Cronson, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful. It is really exciting seeing some familiar faces and also living landmarks here, like Helene Lerner and Lloyd Zuckerberg, who understand the value of preservation. Besides burgeoning top-notch care, Lenox Hill also has world-class architecture from such practitioners as Schiphol and Ditmars and York and Sawyer, who are in the canon of architecture. I studied them both in undergrad and grad school courses. It is regular practice to successfully reuse buildings in the healthcare industry while maintaining standard of care. Even UPenn's Pennsylvania Hospital integrates a 1750s building in 2025. In light of our dire climate crisis, where building debris comprises 40% of global emissions, What is being done to preclude demolition of what stands and protect the significant buildings under threat for the next generation of New Yorkers?
Good question.
First of all, the floor-to-floor heights of the historic buildings that we would be taking down really can't accommodate today's healthcare needs. The mechanical systems, the medical equipment, it's just not possible to put state-of-the-art healthcare facilities in buildings of that size and also of the structural column bay. Further, the actual structure is not really accommodating to contemporary equipment in terms of vibrations and things of that nature. We are very sensitive as a practice to reuse buildings when we can, but we also believe that when buildings cannot be repurposed to support the future of an institution that is for the public good, that it is reasonable to remove them and replace them.
Okay, that's an answer. Jane Kutnick.
Hi. I think that a lot of people have talked about the length of the project, and I too am concerned with the length of the project. I've looked extensively over your equipment and wondered, over what you've presented to us, and wondered if there is anywhere that you have talked about how long each phase will be and what you're doing year to year regarding these phases. And in addition to that, if the project does go through, will there be a way to liaison with the community? Because people are concerned that there hasn't been communication. And we'd like to make sure that there is. So once the process starts, how do you plan on involving the community?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. So we have started looking a little bit more detail into schedule. I think a lot of that is not going to be determined down to the shorter portions of each of the phases until we truly understand what the design is. We will continue the process. I know earlier it was mentioned that we have not communicated with our neighbors on our neighboring project on 3rd Avenue, which we actually send out on a weekly basis, a look ahead to the community to let them know exactly what will be going on the construction site on a day-to-day basis. We update that on a bi-weekly basis that goes out with that look ahead. We have special communications where there's anything happening at the job site that might be somewhat out of the norm of the normal day-to-day construction. And this is something that we will continue to do. We will continue to improve upon. We want to partner with the community. We want feedback from the community during the project because we want to make this, as easy as we can in the environment for our neighbors to work with us. So yes, 100%, we will have multiple mechanisms to work with the community, communicate with the community throughout the project.
Okay, next we have Ann Goodbody. You are still muted. Hold on. You have to unmute yourself, I think, at this point.
Yeah, look for a prompt on the bottom of your device asking you to confirm.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. There's a critical affordability issue here. Northwell has failed to, I apologize, puppy. Northwell has failed to disclose cost estimates, financing plans, revenues, operating and debt service forecasts in its filings. Lenox Hill has an operating loss before non-patient revenues. You're adding only 25 rooms. Can you please explain how this grand project and be financially viable without a huge increase in rates or including just high margin services. And which, by the way, Medicare and many commercial insurers won't pay for.
Yes, certainly. So we're not here to talk about how we are planning the financial vehicles of the cost of this project. And so we're not going to delve into those. It is going to change over time, particularly as we design this project, and the funding will come from various sources, whether that's operating budgets, debt service, or philanthropy, but that will continue to be modified as we move forward. We have no intent in raising healthcare costs through this project. You see healthcare continuing to grow across the United States and in New York. There is a need for modernizing facilities. We can't simply stop modernizing facilities to be able to offer the best level of care to our patients in our community, saying that this is all cost-based, because it's not. We don't have an intent of passing this in any way, shape to the consumer or the patient in that regard. And I will again reiterate that Medicare and Medicaid currently do and will continue to pay for the single-bedded rooms that we plan to build that are more focused on the patient and the patient's needs.
Okay, thank you. Next we have, and I apologize, actually I apologize to everyone for any mispronunciation of names, Ali Sadijian.
That was very impressive, and you can just call me by my first name always. Hard last name. I live on 76 and Lex, and my question is about something you showed on your slides. To give credit, I like your presentation because in the beginning you put everything in the context of new specific services you want to offer with this that you cannot do with your current. I understand you would be able to do these new things. However, as a member of community, I have access to all the hospitals here, specifically some that do some of the things that you want to do already. So this is my question. It goes to why here. If you go back to your slides, which one of the new services you highlighted as new capabilities for you are the ones that nobody in the neighborhood now offers and is also new for community, not just new for you?
Do we have any new services?
So again, we're continued from a new services perspective. It's a little bit more of a complex question. So we have a lot, again, we have multiple clinical departments that we have had throughout history and we have added over time and that we continue to maintain. And in each one of those clinical departments, we're constantly looking for new in terms of making certain that we're offering the highest level of care to each one of those, whether that's changing the face of care of orthopedics or changing the face of cardiothoracic surgery through minimally invasive robotic surgery. So we're continuing to push new services from that regard as we're continuing to maintain those services that we have had really over the past generations. I may have misunderstood the question.
Yeah, my question was, what is the new, since I'm still on mute. My question was, what are the things that are new for the community, as in no other hospital offers and you're going to be able to offer? I understand it's new for you. You can do things you cannot do today. But which ones are new for community? Because there are many other hospitals here that do some of the things that you want to do, or they already do it. So as a community, maybe I might not want that.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I understand there may be a difference between what the community thinks that they want as outsiders and thinks what they want as patients. And that difference really changes, again, as you become a patient, because there's different portions of your life that you're going to spend in both. Some as a patient, some as a caregiver, some as a receiver of care, some adjacent to care, and some where you need no care at all. And that want or that desire in terms of what you feel you may need changes throughout that continuum. So we offer many services. We offer many programs that are unique and innovative throughout our building, throughout our departments, that are unique to Lenox Hill, unique to the physicians that we have, and unique to those care teams that equally work with them to offer those services. Even if you look at the discussion that we've had tonight on single-bedded rooms and the seeming controversy that it raises in the community about its payment model and whether it's necessary, that in itself is a complete newness to have our entire hospital within single-bedded rooms and a commitment to that. It's an equitable commitment to every single person who walks in, regardless of knowing that they need that when they walk in the hospital. So there's a myriad of those factors that really are going to be present that continue to push that envelope of care. We've seen that throughout our history, whether it was the first angiograph ever performed in the United States, the first angioplasty ever performed in the United States, and the continued first that we've had over the course of multiple years of time, which is so exceptional about the physician and clinical partnerships that we think are the paramount aspects of what we offer to our community.
Okay, thank you. Nina Brody.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of quick questions, and I want to just commend Andrew Gaspar for what he had to say. I believe in one of your previous presentations, you said the average square footage of your rooms is something like over 400 square feet. Is that correct?
If I could just help, the new rooms, is this?
Yes.
Yeah, the new rooms, the average is 340.
Okay, it seems a little bit large. I was upset about the construction noise. So if there are exceptions for almost any contingency, of course, it's not going to be kept between 8 and 6 p.m. Your presenter said, if we deem that the work needs to continue, it sounds to me this is going to be all day, all night long. And that doesn't sound appropriate for the neighborhood. And then my last question is retail space for health and wellness. What is that? That sounds a little untoward.
I'm not quite certain I understand what you're referring to.
You said you're going to have retail space on Park Avenue for health and wellness. What is that?
I'm sorry. Yes, there's a pharmacy component piece that is something that we currently offer within the confines of the hospital equally. It's very important for our patients to leave with the medications that they need. And so that is something that has been well served for our patients now, and we would like to continue that. It will also have an accessibility from individual who's not receiving care within the hospital to come to our pharmacy and get their medications. But the retail, I'm sorry, is a pharmacy.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Hazel Mannheimer.
I am stating this in the spirit of serving the community. Having had experiences with emergency rooms at your hospital and also on 100th and 5th, I can tell you that your emergency room far surpasses the other peer hospital. It was a much more pleasant experience. The problem all over is the lack of beds, moving people from the emergency room to upstairs to be admitted. And what concerns me really is not that you're going to have 9 years of construction or whatever, but it's really for the benefit of the community that we add more beds for people who need to be admitted to hospitals. And you can't really call this bedpan alley. Actually, the community is probably getting older and we need more hospitals than fewer hospitals. So, okay.
Thank you.
And also, I did want to say one other thing.
Okay.
Cut off.
So if I may, Anthony, just I agree with many points. And I think that the piece of what was brought up about the movement of an allowance of patients out of the emergency department is a really important factor. Again, where single bedded rooms come in. Because right now we could have, unfortunately, Mrs. Jones waiting in the emergency department because the only beds that are currently available are those that have a male roommate. And we're not going to put Mrs. Jones with a male roommate. In the future, with single bedded rooms, that wouldn't happen. She could go straight to that available bed. The same thing with any kind of infectious testing. When we have people come into the emergency department, we need to test for multiple different types of infection, whether they feel that they have that or not. COVID, flu, RSV, particularly in the time period now, as we see influenza A continue to uptick. So that also causes a delay in an individual coming out of the emergency department to going to the bed because we need to be cognizant that we're going to put them in the room with somebody else. Again, that is a piece that we're attempting to improve upon and eliminate with single bedded rooms because they can await their testing in the comfortability of their room upstairs.
Okay, thank you. That's actually a very interesting point. Corinne Pulitzer. You have to unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. Thank you very much. I'd like to say that I think we have, the only thing I find that we have in common is that we both want a quality of life. I live on Park Avenue on 75th Street, and I chose to live here for over 30 years because of the quality of life and the services and amenities. And I do have many Lenox Hill relationships with the hospital. But the city is not static. And when you did your plans, congestion pricing, which was not on the table, is now a reality. And contrary to what Governor Hochul likes to spin, you can't get a garage space on the Upper East Side because everyone above 60th Street is coming our way. In addition, the city has mandated so many upgrades to the buildings in the neighborhood. You see all the netting and scaffolding, which causes other issues that we have to deal with, which affect quality of life. So it's great that you want to upgrade your business and cater to people, 450 people, to have their own private room, and take 9 years of a quality of life away from all of us.
Okay, I think that was a comment. We can move on. Elaine. Go. Let's unmute Elaine. I see her waiting for the magic. There you go.
Excuse me. I just talked in reference to the other conversation. I've had maybe the privilege of sitting on a task force for at least 3 years prior to the pandemic, of which we participated with Lenox Hills people. Many of you are no longer there. I have not seen in this presentation any changes to the discussions we had. One being the ambulance entrance and exit. You're still going to go in on 76, back out. The height of the building has not changed, but for 4 stories. There is no information from you about an analysis of an option to do a horizontal hospital along the side streets, particularly, 77th Street, where while it's R8B, we had agreed that since it's really your block, you wouldn't. What can you tell us about what options were looked at from a zoning perspective? Because the arrogance of your height of a building, given all your medical stuff, I understand, has not been explained. So can you please do that?
Thank you, Elaine.
Yeah, so a couple pieces, and I'll probably call in a friend as well. Thank you, Elaine, and I know you've participated in this project, and certainly I'm very appreciative for your voice and your participation. We have really substantially reduced the height when you think about the fact that we started out at over 516 feet. And that's, I think, often forgot about our initial proposal that we went in. So we're talking about a height reduction that now is somewhere near 100 of that with the second option. So it is an important piece that we do need to recognize. With regard to the ambulances, we agree with you. We would like them to pull fully through. And right now, we haven't figured out a way to be able to do that. And we're fully committed to continuing to look at that as this process continues. But in lieu of that ability to do that, from the construction constraints, we still think that bringing them off the street is the best thing to do for the access for our patients, for the respect of the pedestrians, for the respect of the vehicular traffic and all components of that. And really, in many ways, the idea of the zoning piece, again, we were attempting to change some of that with option 2 of this idea of how further could we push along the block. And it's complicated, again, due that we are going to continue our operations and the importance of that continuation of the operations, which is a major factor regardless of how it's zoned or otherwise.
I would just add, we have looked at moving the bulk across the site. It's really not a zoning issue for us. What inhibits us from doing that is remaining in operation. And we would have to put new columns through the building, reinforce foundations, and essentially close the hospital for the duration of that construction. And having studied this around the country, once you close a hospital, it takes a decade to rehire your doctors and your nurses and your staff. And because Lennox is committed to staying here, and because the census really says that these beds are needed here, and single beds in particular, we just felt that you cannot close the hospital.
Thank you. That was actually an excellent, a revealing answer. John Lilly, please.
Yeah, hi. I'm concerned about a lot of this, a lot of the impacts on the neighborhood. I live on 78th Street. But one of the big ones is sunlight. I'm a big fan of sunlight, and it's famously important for health outcomes, both in mental health and physical health. And I'm concerned about the effects that this kind of behemoth will have on that you're proposing to build. Now, I guess this is a question for the environmental consultant. Will we be getting a comprehensive shadow study for, throughout the neighborhood and throughout the year as part of your package? And if not, could that be added, please? Thank you.
The environmental impact statement will follow the guidelines of the Seeger Technical Manual, which addresses 4 analysis days, specific analysis days across the year, and is also focuses on sunlight dependent resources that are publicly accessible. So private residences are not considered impacted under the Seeger guidance. But
as far as access, their access to the.
And the study will appear in the EIS. Yes.
Okay, Nancy Trowbridge. You're not quite unmuted. Still not unmuted.
Nancy, look for a prompt on the bottom of your device asking you to confirm unmuting. Can't hear you.
No, because you're still muted. Okay, we look carefully at it. We'll come back to you. Richard Pearl.
Yes, as you go through the process of gaining the permits necessary to move forward, it's possible that you will be asked to make some changes. One of the things that seems to concern everyone is the height of the building. If you had to reduce the height by 15% down to 320 feet, what would you do? How would you accommodate that change? Would you reduce the height of the ceilings in the rooms or in other parts of the facility? How would you deal with that?
Yeah, so that's a really important question. It's a powerful one. And I think the challenge there is that, unfortunately, what ends up happening is you have to eliminate some service that we provide. We have built this again, and the importance of how we get to the different areas of height are based on the clinical services that we offer. That then goes through a process through strategic planning to look at the bed count and the need and everything from that, and that all gets put into the building of the project. So we build from the patient, from the clinical services, and go up.
My question is, how would you deal with it if you were only allowed to build 320 feet high?
Yeah, so if we were to build only under only 320 feet within this, we would have to cut some aspect of the project, and that means cutting some aspect of clinical services, whether that's maternal child, behavioral health, something along those lines, which is not what we want to do. I don't know how to necessarily answer the question from a perspective. It's not as simple as just lowering a height, floor to ceiling heights or this different aspect there. That's all been explored in the project. So I'm not trying to do disservice to your question. I'm trying to really show the focus again of how we got to where we got to is based on that aspect of things.
Can I jump in, Anthony? Can I just ask then if that is the answer to Mr. Pearl's question, then can I ask what services have you sacrificed to get from 516 to 395?
Yeah, so that's a change in terms of the total project of what we were able to accomplish. The 516 was really centered around the residential piece and that aspect of how that really changed the block.
Excuse me, the residential was an entirely different building.
Yes, it was, but it took up and required us to take down portions of the hospital, which required the building to be higher at 516. So it's still the same math because we were giving our land to the residential, or selling rather than giving, selling our land to the residential. We no longer do that in option 1, which allows that height to come down. Option 2's height comes down further by going further across the block.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Ed. All right, let's try Nancy Trowbridge again. She's right there. I see her.
See, so just need to push the button to confirm unmuting on your device. We cannot hear you until you do it.
We are still in the same place.
Yep.
Okay. And now Frankie Scanlon.
Thank you.
Oh,
That's
Francie Scanlon, excuse me.
Thanks so much.
There you are. Yes, go ahead. We've now lost you.
You are. Yes.
You are having problems, or we are having problems, not you. We are having problems hearing you. So I'm afraid I'm gonna have to let you go. And we're going to move ahead again, or differently, to Elaine Abelson.
Okay. I live on 74th Street, and my question really is about the size of the buildings, 76, 77. The density, the height, they're gargantuan buildings. And it's like you threw in everything in your wish list and put them in those 2 buildings. And in terms of the zoning in the neighborhood, you have to get exceptions for all of those, as far as I understand. And I really wondered what you could say about these zoning and the size of these buildings, which are far out of scale to what's there now, and what the zoning is for the neighborhood for mid-block.
So we went through the list of proposed zoning actions in the deck. We are asking for changes to the zoning to accommodate the proposed project. I think it's important to note that the existing hospital complex doesn't comply with current zoning. It has greater floor area and greater height than is currently allowed. And the proposal that we're seeking really recognizes the historic land use on this site, and in keeping with the trend of what has been approved for other healthcare institutions, increases the amount of floor space and increases the height to accommodate modern healthcare needs. And significant efforts have been made throughout this process to respond to comments about height. There's been a 123-foot reduction in total height on Lexington since the start of this process. So, we recognize that this is a project that requires waivers, but it is in keeping with the way the city has looked at these institutions in recent decades.
Okay, we're going to try Francie Scanlon again. Hopefully she will be audible. You're up. A very bad connection. We can't really hear you. I'm going to have to move on because we're getting 8:30. Okay. I'm sorry,
Can you hear
Francie.
me? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now barely.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, here we go. Is there any truth to the notion that Northwell Lenox Hill is thinking, contemplating strongly, centering within the totality of this newly imagined hospital, a palliative care focus, not hospice, but palliative care that will impact and influence the quality of life and bring a greater organic aspect to the totality of what you now.
Not quite certain if that was the end of the question. First of all, palliative care is an incredible and extremely important aspect of the care that we already provide, and we need that to continue. Palliative care is about goals of care for a patient and understanding what matters most to them. How can we make certain that we are consistently checking in on all of our patients with regard to that, but in particularly those that are at a fragile portion in their life. So we are fully committed to the continuation of our palliative care services. And that is rather robust, including holistic nursing and how we offer a myriad of services to really make certain, again, that we're patient focused in this regard. So thank you for your applause and really support of palliative care.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Kosovar Januzzi. I hope that was close.
Hi, thank you. Yes, you pronounced it quite well. Thank you so much. I want to preface this by saying that I lived here for a long time, and both my kids were born in Lenox Hill. I want to touch on what Mr. Pearl mentioned regarding lowering the height of the building, as it's a major point of contention, obviously, with most of the neighborhood. I presume it's because of the proposed 475 single rooms. And my question is, why not consider a proposition with a combination of single and double rooms that offer a more affordable care option and overall lowers the height of the building?
So a couple things on that regard. First of all, a double room or shared room is not more affordable than a single room. I can't reiterate that enough. There just is no change in the cost of care, but there's a wild difference in the outcome of care. And that is a service that we're looking to make certain they provide to each and one of our patients. Right now, we do have that combination of shared and single rooms. And what I can tell you is that every person who comes in wants a single room. And unfortunately, we can't provide that to them. This is something that we feel, again, is a really important aspect and a change in the evolution of where we really need to go. So there really is, again, no change in affordability based on that. And already being in the situation of that disparity between those who are able to have the single room and those who are not, we're really trying to make it equitable across all individuals who come in.
Okay. I think now I'm going to jump in again. I apologize a little bit. I think part of the question is not so much should you have fewer single rooms, but I think that the question that I would ask would be why could these rooms not be somewhat smaller? And if they were somewhat smaller, not half the size, even 20%, you would be able to have more rooms on a floor and, as a consequence, fewer rooms to achieve 450 beds.
So just one aspect, it still wouldn't be fewer rooms to achieve those beds. But a couple things that we need to talk about, even in the 340 square foot, our square footage includes that of the bathroom as well as the nursing area, unlike some of the other square footage we've seen in different projects. So just want to make apples to apples comparison. And it's an important question. And I think, again, this is one that we're trying to commit to really future-proofing where we need to go. Right now, the size of the room is really in many ways based on the clearances that are important for the care that can be provided in that room. The size changes if there is no monitoring necessary versus there is monitoring necessary versus if there is an ICU level of care that is really required. one of the most powerful lessons that we learned in COVID was the quickness with which a new disease entity can go from the need of no monitoring to full ICU level care in hours, in an unprecedented way that we really hadn't seen. And one of the challenges then becomes we have to move that patient to the different room to be able to provide that care. It's not centered around the patient in doing so, and it certainly doesn't allow us to really care for the patient the best way while they're in such a fragile aspect. So we chose to go with the ability to make any one of these rooms be able to perform at the level of an ICU. And that was the piece. That was the idea of how do we future-proof even ratios of how many ICU beds do we need versus how many non-ICU beds do we need? How do we think about the aging population? We're facing with the most aged population the United States has ever seen, and that's going to require a different level of care. So we're trying to put in foresight now to make certain that we can really continue to provide the highest level of care for all patients as they come in.
Okay, thank you. Nick Reese.
I think I'm unmuted finally.
You are? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Nancy. We hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want me to talk? Is it my, or do you
It
want
is
to take
your
Nick
turn
here?
to talk.
What? Should I
It's
do
your
it, Nick?
turn.
My turn. Okay. Nancy Trowbridge here. My question has to do with finance. Construction is expensive, and the costs do not go down, they go up. By the time this is done, there will be a huge construction bill, which will probably be dealt with by the state, partly by the New York State. But my real question has to do with what comes after everything is built and ready to go. And that is the Lenox Hill has struggled with operating losses in the past. And if they've got Northwell has this big construction nut, which will be very expensive. How do they, and if the hospital then, whether with only adding 25 rooms, will it then become profitable as opposed to an operating loss?
Again, so the financial vehicles again of the project in terms of how we're paying, I just going to say we're still not speaking to tonight. They're complicated and complex, a longer discussion and something that will evolve with how we go forward. We're not currently operating at a loss at Lenox Hill, and don't intend for that to continue. So, I mean, I can tell you this as seeing the financial statements on a regular basis. We don't currently carry an operating loss, nor did we last year either. There have been time periods during our existence where that has occurred, certainly. And you can see that fluctuate from the 1900s all the way through the 2000s from that aspect. Our most recent operating losses were in pandemic when almost every single hospital and healthcare system suffered massive operating losses based on the cost of care that was necessary for the COVID population. But we've recovered since then, and we're very proud of that recovery because it shows, again, our dedication to the clinical services that we're offering. So we're planning, again, for that to continue, for us to continue to push clinical care and equally be able to manage our expenses and continue to have a profitable operating margin that as a nonprofit goes back into the health system and is reinvested so that, again, we can offer care across a larger continuum of our patient population in New York City and beyond.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for your patience, Nancy Trowbridge. Now we have Nick Reese.
Thanks. This is a bigger picture question about what do you assess the probability to be that your current plan or something very similar to it is approved and eventually constructed? Is that 50% or 95%? And that difference between 100%, what do some of those other routes potentially look like? And have you thought about that?
Sure. I'm not ready to disclose what I think the percentage chance is from that perspective. I think it's under the control of multiple variables. You know, I'm very hopeful and I'm going to remain positive. And as the president of the institution, I really have to continue to put forward the idea that this is a necessity in terms of continuing the care for our generations to come. And out of the respect, again, of getting in front of our team members on a regular basis that I do, when they're coming and saying, we need better space for our patients, we need better space for ourselves, we need to continue to push what we're really able to offer. So Again, I appreciate the comment. It's complex, and thank you.
Okay. Now we have Geraldine Bean. I hope that was right.
Hi, it's Geraldine Bien. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
This is my first time in the meeting. I just wanted to shout out for Lenox Hill Hospital. My mom has been going to the hospital for years, and I do see a very big difference for when she's in a private room. She goes home much faster. So I just wanted to say that, first of all. Recently, she went in as a stroke code, and I met her at the hospital, and she was on Lexington when I got there, being, taken out of the ambulance, and because there was traffic jam. So I'm just wondering how, like, I do see the need for the emergency entrance, but I'm wondering, there is a trauma hospital nearby, a few blocks away. Would it be a consideration to have a hospital somewhere else in the city that really focuses just on elderly care?
That's a really interesting concept. And first of all, thank you for your support. And really, it means a lot when we hear about patient stories and the importance and the impact that we make in the lives. So thank you for that. I think we put a lot of focus on the idea of how do we really make certain that our spaces throughout the hospital are appropriate for an elderly population and an aging population. We've actually done a lot of work in our emergency department. There are some certifications that we've obtained, as well as trying to push that even further to make certain, because it is a different level of care. The medications change, the need for watching falls change, the need for how you wayfind changes, all those different pieces. And so what we're really hoping to put into the design of this is that it really can be accessed by everyone and an aging population equally. So I really love where your concept is. I don't know that we need to build a separate hospital for that. I think we can do that within the confines of the new build and the renewal that we're aiming for.
And just one point, if I can make one point, just so it's clear, the proposal is for an emergency entrance on Lexington Avenue, but there's also a separate ambulance bay on 77th Street. So in that circumstance, the ambulance would go down 77th Street, drop off in the building.
Great, thank you. Okay, Kate Stammel.
Hi, thank you very much. I live on 78th Street with my husband and 3 young kids, who, based on the proposed timeline, will spend most of their childhood living through the construction. I also work full-time from home as a lawyer, supporting my family, and I'm required to be on Zoom calls all day. And our south windows face Lenox Hill Hospital. So I'm specifically concerned about representations of adverse impact on the neighborhood and the expected significant noise levels, and also why you think storm windows and AC units are adequate mitigation when this project will significantly impact the enjoyment of our home and others around us day and night. And I'd also just like to understand what we can expect in terms of working with and listening to neighbors from Northwell during construction when we have immediate concerns. In that vein, I echo the concern mentioned by others who are my neighbors on this call to the lack of outreach to date. Thank you.
So a couple of those we brought up a bit in the past, and so past questions. Again, understanding that there will be a wider look at the mitigation and everything from that standpoint when the DIS is fully available, and there will be a public hearing on the DIS for a lot of these things, and understanding there's a lot of nuance in there that you'd like to see, and that will come. Fully understand your concern for the impact that it would have, and again. The concerns are very important, they're very relevant, and they're very real, as is, again, the concerns that we have for what we're trying to accomplish. So we have done a lot in terms of reaching out. We can always do more. So I will tell you that we will continue to strive to reach out more often and to a wider audience as much as we can. And we fully plan to have, as we do, again, as what Jonathan was talking about in our 3rd Avenue site, a real ability for two-way communication between us and the community. It's not just about us putting out information, but it's also equally important. We need to listen to what's said back to us, and did so on multiple occasions, particularly with the schools that are present there.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think both Sean G. and Grace Polk have already commented. And unless I'm very much mistaken, I'm going to skip them because it's already 8:44 and we're trying to give people one chance. So let's now move on to Lionel Bricks, maybe. I mean, if that's
Good evening to everyone. Earlier, you mentioned during this call that zoning isn't the issue. That the issue is that you're trying to keep this hospital operational because it takes years, up to 10 years, to be as operational as it was originally. Would you not be able to keep it operational using other sites by removing some of the services temporarily or permanently to nearby buildings or other places in New York? And my second question is, if your zoning change request is rejected, would it be possible for you to renovate the hospital and relocate some of the services nearby on the Upper East Side and other places in New York City? Thank you.
Yeah, so why don't you go ahead, Terrence, and I'm happy to as well. So.
A hospital is a complex ecosystem these days, and separating service lines in the diagnostic and treatment platform where procedures happen and in proximity to ICUs and inpatient beds is really not something that can be pulled apart. We have already actually, to lower the building and make the lift less heavy, built Third Avenue or building Third Avenue to take out of the hospital those things that are not essential to the type of care that we need tomorrow, which is I can come in, I can have a procedure, I can go to an ICU if I need it, I can go into an inpatient facility if I need it, I can have imaging there. That ecosystem has to be self-contained.
Okay. I apologize to Grace Polk, who had not spoken before. And so I'm going to call on her before I come around to Chloe and then Ben Weintraub.
Thank you very much. I am a member of the church that is directly opposite Lenox Hill Hospital on 77th Street. And we maintain the garden that is going to be under some adverse impact, as you call it, during your construction. In the most recent plans for the project site 1A on 77th Street, I perhaps have not seen the latest. I'd like to describe the difference in the height and depth of the building since from where it stands right now, because at the moment there is still some sun that's able to reach into our garden. And my fear was when I first saw this project drawn out, it was going to be higher and it was going to be deeper on the lot. Is Site 1A part of the overall growth of the hospital, or is it a separate event? Can it proceed before the rest of the hospital is built? And can this go forward before everything else is voted on?
So when you say 170,
yeah. Site 1A.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not part of this zoning.
Correct. It is not part of the zoning application for this project. We chose to include it in the EIS to study the effects of both the Site 1A project as well as the Site 1 project in tandem, as they are projects that would happen simultaneously. But it is not part of the zoning actions that we are asking for. It is viewed as an as-of-right building and will be constructed to the zoning and building department requirements of that site.
And it's another example of Lenox trying to take things out of the hospital to make the bulk lower and to use that site as of right. They're allowed to use it for these things in order to keep the overall volume of the building smaller.
Okay, thank you. We now have Chloe.
Yes, hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm your neighbor on
73rd Street, just off of Park. So I totally respect you want to expand your business. I'm a management consultant. I know if you're not growing, you're dying. So I fully understand that. But I want to ask about your justification for the zoning changes. This is the reason my husband and I choose to live here is this is a historic area. It's a very unique area in the country and in the city because of its historic status. And because of that, space is finite. We can't just do whatever we want here with construction with respect to private businesses or our own homes. I can't just add as many floors as I'd like to our penthouse, as much as I wish that I could, despite feeling that it is a necessity as my family grows. So beyond feeling that this is a necessity for the neighborhood, I think the neighborhood needs many things. I think it needs a bigger Whole Foods, a proper tea room, but I need to understand a little bit more than that. Why the hospital feels there should be exceptions issued to existing zoning rules that wouldn't be applied to anybody else in the neighborhood.
Sure, thanks for the question. So a few points. One is that the hospital is not within either the limited height district that's mapped on the mid-blocks or within the Upper East Side Historic District, which may be what you're referring to. The proposal that's been put forth recognizes that this site has historically, for over 100 years, been used as a hospital, but has outdated buildings that no longer meet the needs of contemporary healthcare. And so as has been recognized in connection with other applications by other institutions in the city, to meet the city policy of supporting the continued operation of these facilities, the hospital is proposing zoning changes to allow for an increase in bulk on the site. So we recognize that there is an increase. I think, again, it's important to recognize the current building is not compliant with the zoning controls that were mapped after these buildings were built. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but we put forth a proposal that is consistent with land use planning for healthcare institutions in the city of New York.
Okay, thank you. Ben Weintraub. There you are.
Hi, Dr. Baker. We've spoken before. I was on the task force with Gail Brewer and Keith Powers 6 years ago. At the time, I didn't understand why you couldn't close down for a few years. I still don't. You mentioned a study showing that it takes 10 years for hospitals to get their business back. I'd like to see that study. I don't believe it. I think you're probably comparing us to a hospital in Des Moines, Iowa. I don't believe your data. I'd like to see it.
I don't have data. I never said there was a
I'd like to see whatever information you have about that. You can drop a spreadsheet off at my lobby, 136 East 76th Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. This is something that is incredibly important to really, again, look at. There is very little difference between a hospital closing on day one and what that impact is in the long-term closure of a hospital. And so when we look at, again, the large and loud argument about BI, we would face that exactly on the moment that we shut down the hospital in order to rebuild, because those services would simply go away immediately. And that is not what we intend to happen. We have a dedication, a commitment, and a mission statement to our patients, and we're continuing on that mission.
Okay, thank you. Alan Harris.
Hi, I'm Alan Harris. I live at 122 East 76th Street. The building is owned by Lenox Hill Hospital. They are violating every restriction of the governing zoning law of ZR 2214 of having no more than 50 office workers for executive, administrative, and scholarly functions in 18 offices with no sleeping accommodations. They now have between 150 and 250 employees. They've allowed nurses to come from the hospital during highly infectious states existing across in the hospital, which is illegal and endangering. You've allowed a Class A apartment for sleeping accommodations for a hospital employee. You've removed asbestos from multiple offices and apartments without permits and the required safeguards, endangering your own employees. You have outstanding violations and $118,000 in unpaid violations. You have not re-rented any tenant apartments for 2 decades and have taken the 7 Class A apartments dedicated to tenants for your own illegal use. You do not have a valid existing certificate of occupancy and have failed miserably to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the occupants.
Oh, quite a mouthful.
That was the thing.
No, there wasn't a question posed. I understand the concerns that are raised. Our intent is not to talk about this evening. Our intent is to talk about a different component piece, understanding the concerns that the gentleman has raised.
Okay. And so we might end up having to have another conversation another time. All right. I have the next person. I don't think this is your name, Zoom user.
I don't know. Is that me?
That's you. That's you.
I'm Rachel Potasnik. I live on East 77th. I'm between the construction site on 2nd Avenue, which goes from early morning till the wee hours of the next morning, and the construction site on 3rd Avenue. And forgive me if you've already answered, what is the 3rd Avenue entire block that was decimated, you know, taking away a lot of important community retail spaces, and what you're building for 25 beds and taking away a radiology department?
I'm not quite certain I understand the taking away. There is a reduction and perhaps that's what you were seeing on the slide, that we're taking away some of our imaging machines within the project. Part of that is actually tied into the 3rd Avenue component build, where there will be imaging available so that it's no longer needed within the hospital. So speaking again about that, what can we move out and to what degree? I'm not quite certain of the other portion of the question. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I think you more or less answered it. Nora Ryan is next, and you've been very patient.
Yes, thank you very much. I live on East 79th Street, and just help me understand as an average layperson, your square footage, it's back to the height. The square footage for option 1 and option 2. In my co-op, for example, we have 20 floors. How many floors is the higher portion of option 1 and option 2? And what percentage is that? 20% more, 50% more, twice as high as the average building in this neighborhood?
Data. We don't have the data about the average.
Yeah, I don't think we have the data. Can you repeat the other question though? 'Cause I'm not quite sure I understood it.
How many floors will there be in the highest portion of the building?
So in option 1, there will be 26 floors. And in option 2, it will be reduced to 22 floors because we are putting more bulk in the mid-block.
Okay. Next we have Michelle Balfour.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for taking my call. I wanted to say that we have been in Lenox Hill Hospital several times. We had a very sick family relative a while ago. I've spent time wandering through the hallways of the hospital, and it is in dire need of a big renovation. So I don't know, Dan, if maybe you could touch upon a few things that are desperately in need of an update.
So first of all, sorry to hear about your loved one. There are multiple things that are needed an update, and that's the nature in many ways of this project. There are aspects that we continue to touch up on a regular basis. There's a lot of capital that we put into the infrastructure of this facilities and the multiple buildings that we have on a regular basis. But really, again, the way in which these buildings were designed, the age of the buildings, necessitates new build and necessitates the opportunity to really pivot in a different way from the constant upkeep of the spaces that we currently occupy. I hope that answered in some fashion your question.
Okay, just one comment about the previous question. I think for people to understand, if tomorrow or the next day you go and stand on the northeast corner of 77th and Lexington and look at the tallest, I think it is the tallest building on the current Lenox Hill Hospital campus, that building is probably about maybe less than half the height of the smaller proposal, closer to a third of the smaller proposal, which will also occupy the entire Lexington Avenue block front and extend back more or less 100 feet. So just to give you an idea that this is much, much bigger than what's there now. And that's not really a comment on anything except that question. We now have David.
Can we respond to that point? I just want to clarify a few things. One is that the highest point of the current hospital is at the mid-block, actually, and it's about over 200 feet tall.
Okay.
And on Lexington Avenue today, current zoning, if you're taking into account mechanical space as the proposal is, current zoning would allow a height of 270 feet, which is
yes. No, I'm not saying that. All I am saying, I am not inferring anything about current zoning. I am in fact just suggesting that for people to understand what you are planning, they can stand and look and see something twice as big. That's all.
That's fair.
And if you built something within the current zoning, I don't think anyone would complain, even if it is twice the size, even if it is taller than what's there now. David Nagler, I hope.
Hi, how are you? Appreciate you coming out here. I had a specific question about these new ambulance bays you're putting on 77th Street. I live on 77th and Park, and the south side of 77th Street is probably the most heavily trafficked of the 4 sidewalks that join on the cross streets on 77th and 76. Am I correct? You said there's going to be 6 ambulance bays. Having ambulances backing up, and these are people, they're not going to be taking their time into 77th Street sidewalk continuously throughout the day, strikes me as a very dangerous proposition. You have a lot of school children walking up and down that block all day long. And I'm just wondering, A, how many ambulance visits do you get a day? And because you have these 6 ambulance bays, it would lead me to believe you're expanding your emergency services. I'm curious in the EIS, how many ambulance visits are you planning to have per day?
So a couple of factors to bring in. I don't have the number of ambulance visits that we have per day. It is variable. I can tell you that piece, and can't speak to the EIS until it's made public through the certification process. With regard to the nature of the question about the importance of the congestion and the foot traffic that occurs there, we agree with you, but we cause the majority of it by our entrance. So the majority of the reason for that side of the street, the south side of the street, being the largest volume of individuals on a regular basis, on a daily basis, is because of our hospital. Our team members all enter in the mid-block. Our patients coming into the main hospital all enter into the mid-block. And that happens, again, each and every day. That would change in the building design. And so that's the aspect. And so the entrances that we're proposing that would even exist on the 77th would be on the eastern side of where the ambulance bays would be, for your exact concern. So taking that component in our mindset is how we have, again, pushed the entrances around on Lexington and also further east so that there isn't that pedestrian traffic and consolidation there.
Okay, thank you. And now we have one more member of the public, Craig Oxman.
Hello. I have one question. If this project is so important to Northwell Health, why isn't Michael Dowling on this call?
I don't know quite how to answer that question. It's very important to Michael. I met with him yesterday, the day before, and I met with him last week all about this project. I meet with him on a regular basis. He has spoken to multiple individuals, including our Lenox Hill Hospital board, about its very importance and the very nature of the care that we offer in Lenox Hill. I know that he is immeasurably proud of what Northwell has been able to do in conjunction with Lenox Hill. The programmatic development that we've had since Northwell acquired Lenox Hill, and really, again, the importance of the care that we're offering. So I will speak for him in that only regard, that I know of the pride that he takes in this institution and the importance of the care that we provide to the community.
Okay, now we can go to members, excuse me, members of the committee. One thing I'd like to say before we start, we're going, because it's already after 9, we're going to try and limit people to
I think we just need to do a bit of a time check from this perspective. We are planning to be back, and we talked about that at the very beginning, but we also did have a discussion about this in advance, so I think that that's an appropriate piece that needs to be thought through. So if you want to take a moment, just real quick, Anthony, to confer with Valerie, and then we can better understand the time check on this. Equally, again, like I said, this is not going to be the last conversation by any means. We will fully be compliant with the ULURP process, the public hearings, and the need to continue this conversation to the community at large.
Just hold on one moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
There's Marco grinning.
Okay. We're going to limit committee members to 2 minutes. We're not going to go around twice, just once. And we're going to start with Michelle Birnbaum.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you to the hospital. Without using my time, I want to clarify something for Nora. That building is 436 feet. If you're thinking about it in terms of a regular apartment building or a co-op, that's 10 feet to a floor. That would make this building 43 stories. So now, please, you can start my time. If you don't mind, I appreciate that. You talked about 2 plans. From my point of view, to me, that's sort of spreading the disaster going west on the street. If I had a choice, I would take the larger building, although I yield to what Andrew and others said, and that we don't want any of it. Secondly, on one of your slides, on slide 34, your last comment was that there were alternatives. And so I would like to see that or understand what you meant by that. And thirdly, rather than move, one of the big issues is that nobody wants construction for 9 or more years. And I understand you can't move part of the hospital or divide departments, but is there any reason, or have you even looked at closing the hospital to cut your construction time and putting that hospital in its totality in another facility?
The answer is that we don't have any intent to close.
You don't have what? I'm sorry?
We don't have any intent to close the hospital.
You've made that very clear. Exactly. I understand you don't want to, But my understanding is you didn't want to close the hospital because it would be a problem for you. Either you felt that you would lose patients, you would lose staff, you
It's a
didn't want to
problem for our
divide your
patients.
facilities.
That's what I said. So
But
it's a problem
my
for our patients.
Yes, but my point is,
Michelle,
I want to clarify, Anthony, if you don't mind. My point was, it would not be a problem for anybody if you move the entire hospital, patient, staff, and facility to an already vacant hospital, of which we have others.
So,
you don't have to answer.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Sharon Polk Marshall. Michelle, there is nothing to answer. You made a statement.
Can you hear me?
Certainly.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Dr. Baker, and also thank you to the Lenox Hill team for the presentation this evening. I'm the executive director for Civitas, and Civitas, the New York Landmarks Conservancy, as well as Friends of the Upper East Side and Carnegie Hill Neighbors, is overwhelmingly opposed to this project from the fact that there's too much height and bulk on Lexington Avenue, to the further encroachment on our mid-blocks, also because of the fact that it's a 9-year build that will only yield a number of rooms that are in the double digits in terms of additional rooms, and also because of the impact of the Park Avenue view corridor, which arguably and urbanistically is our Champs-Élysées, if you will. At the beginning of the presentation, you noted two things. One, that Lenox Hill needs to renew itself, and we support that initiative, but not this particular build proposal. And you also indicated that the buildings were conceptual, and I'm wondering whether or not there is room for you to go back to the drawing board to make some additional changes to address the issues of height and bulk on Lexington Avenue, the further encroachment on the mid-block, as well as the Park Avenue view corridor. Oh, by the way, I love that music, so you can play it often. Thanks, Will. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
I think I missed out on the music part, Anthony. So I thank you for the comment. A point of clarification, the conceptual was with regard to the exterior skin of the building, not to the proposals that we've presented. We've spent a lot of time attempting to, again, add optionality and availability to these different, or excuse me, availability of choice from a lower height and kind of moving into the mid-block on this. But that's where we stand today with those two options.
Thank you. Okay, Sahar, then Marco, Alita, and Judy is our last speaker, Judy Schneider.
Hi, thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you for this great presentation. I just wanted to ask two questions. One, I heard from you that there are around 150,000 patients. So I was just wondering, would the number increase? Is that something in your plan? And if yes, then my main question is, how many of those as a percentage have you put aside for Medicaid patients? So that's one, because of course, I love the fact that you're saying that you are serving Manhattan and even other boroughs, patients coming from all over. So from those, how many are as a percentage on your books that you are proposing that you would have of Medicaid patients? So that is question number one. And number two was, I heard that that you guys mentioned that you have a system in place that the neighbors can reach out, because I'm listening right now. There's so many neighbors who have come on this call and are communicating their, what they feel about this project, what their issues are, what they're fearful of. Once the project begins, is there a way for people to notify you? I know I heard about the online, but what about a phone call or some other system that you have a designated individual who are listening to the queries or issues that the neighbors are going through, so that you can take care of that? What if the people who come to the construction workers, what if they are not within your space but are around, and the neighbors are are facing that? Is there a way for them to reach out to you directly? So 2 questions, and thank you again for this great presentation.
Of course, thank you. A little bit on the first question. Currently, about 55% of our patient population is under governmental insurances, which includes Medicare and Medicaid. And I don't have the exact distribution of the two. I can tell you that Medicare is the larger portion of that rather than Medicaid. But again, it's currently sitting at about 55%. We don't actually, when we look through the future with strategic planning in terms of bed needs and everything from that perspective, the idea of the commercial insurance versus Medicare insurance does not factor into that. We don't weigh that payer mix in any way, fashion of a clinical need for the services. The clinical need is irrespective of the insurance, whether it's, again, including fully insured commercial, governmental, or not insured. So in our projections and understanding about our bed need for the future in the building of 475 beds, that did not weigh in. And so I don't have a factor for you for that. With regard to communication, currently we have a website and an email for which questions about this project can be submitted. And so that will still be open, and we will make certain that everybody has access to that. The questions that had been asked in advance of this meeting, we did our best to answer and put forward on a frequently asked question component piece that we sent to the committee in advance. And so we'll continue to do that. That'll change as the project develops and the construction actually happens, and we will need to go into the use of different modes of communication, to your point. So that will look differently when we enter into this project.
Okay, thank you. Marco.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Baker, for the humanitarian service that you provide for the community and for the humanity. I'm very appreciate that. However, this is not about your profession. This is about the impact of the zoning resolution, quality of air, greenhouse emissions, etc., etc. After that, the MSK was approved in the Community Board 8, and I voted against. The director of the hospital, Dr. Jeff, approached to me and thank you. And he said, quote, now the project is better. Basically, my questions are very uncomfortable for your team. So in that direction, now I'm going to start with the questions. The global warming is a fact. Do you believe that everybody has the moral responsibility to preserve this planet for future generations? Now, anybody can answer that question. I hope this yes. For the counselor, this ULER application is only for hospital programmatic needs. I hope it's yes. Since you determine the height of the building for the designer, you can answer these questions. Are you expected to comply with the local law 97 or 220? What is the ratio for window to wall in your proposed? What is the floor to ceiling height? And what is the percentage of the floor height for mechanicals? I expect to hear the answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I think I only got 3 of them, but I'm also going to phone in a friend here. The one that I know that I could definitively answer is that we do intend to comply with local law 97. With regard to the floor to ceiling height, I believe there is an average in there, and that, Tomas, you told me and I forgot.
Right now, we are carrying 16 feet, and the plenum is approximately 4 feet. That is going to change as the design team and engineering team If the project is approved outside of the ULURP, because it's important, we will work to constantly try to lower that inches by inches as we can do more engineering, as there's more innovation in new mechanical systems and new structural systems. But given our expertise at this stage of a project, that is an appropriate place to start. We will try to beat that in the process. We are very concerned with global climate change, as is our client Northwell. The building will be all electric. And as the building progresses, the DOB will make more and more requirements as to the high performance of the building, and we will continue to comply with that.
Okay, thank you. Now we have Alita, Judy Schneider, and Craig Later. And if everybody's quick, we'll get out of here by 9:30, which, as I understand it, is a hard stop for our friends from Lenox Hill. Alita.
Thank you. So I just want to start, thanks for your presentation, and to say that this has nothing to do with care for individuals, but rather the medical profession has an obligation, and I've talked to doctors about this, that extends beyond individual patients to the broader community. The impact of this building and the community opposition to it suggests very, very strongly that the hospital is not fulfilling its obligation to take care of both the community that doesn't need or want this huge facility and those communities that do need the beds. And you know, or Northwell knows, or it should know, that at St. Vincent's, where there's an emergency room, that patients are brought up to Lenox Hill because it said so for admitting. So that says that you need beds downtown. So one of my questions is, how much smaller would the hospital be if you were able to close it? Because Northwell is the largest hospital system in the state, and there would seem to be ample places that patients and doctors could go during the course of construction, which would certainly be much shorter if the hospital weren't made to be so big in order to stay open. Also, you talk about the risk of infection, but my understanding is that the tall elevator shafts that would be necessary for a 400-foot building are not ideal for containing infections. The same thing, that you want to be a good community neighbor, but we really haven't had an opportunity to weigh in on a lot of this. I'm not sure how the bus lane would be impacted by dropping people off on Lexington Avenue, and why the northbound side of the subway station isn't also going to be modernized and made accessible for people. I also am wondering that you're not closing in a vacuum like it would be if an independent hospital were closing because of the Northwell structure. And it isn't fair to say that it would just be 10 years to bring everything back, because you have those other facilities. And finally, I'd like to suggest, and Skanska, I don't know who you were intending to use, but they're the only name I could come up with, is familiar with a dispute resolution system during the course of construction between construction workers and owners and architects when there are disputes, and that you could certainly, I would think, implement something like that to deal with neighbors' issues during a 9-year period of construction, were this to move forward. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, I think we can. Okay, Judy Schneider.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was quite a change from what you proposed a number of years ago, and I appreciate it. I have two questions, and people who know me will know my first question is about what will you be doing to beautify the blocks around the building, the hospital building and the 3rd Avenue building. We need more greenery, more trees, and that's maybe for the future for you to talk to us about, but please keep that in mind. It's very important to Community Board 8 members. And the other thing I'd like to say, in answer to a lot of the questions the people from the community have been asking about what's going on or what will go on when the hospital actually starts construction, I'm part of the community work group from Memorial Sloan Kettering. Will you have such a group? It meets monthly, and the neighbors who live around the hospital can join in on that meeting. and it's programmed and there's a certain amount of time for question and answers. Will you be doing something like that? It is a good way to keep your neighbors informed, and many of the other hospitals, when they were built, had community work groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. A couple of things. I couldn't agree more about the importance of beautifying the block. Part of it is the actual design of what we're trying to attempt. We need to do a better job of that every day. And so that's something that we need to, again, do a bit better even before this project begins. And we should come back to you and tell you what that it really will look like as the project actually evolves and gets closer. So we will. Equally, it sounds like the idea of a community work group, I really appreciate that. We haven't decided on what our two-way communication strategy will look like. I've heard, again, that it needs to be with the use of multiple modalities. And I think this is certainly something that we can likely look to explore and seek your input on how it's really gone with you and MSK before we even get there. So more to come on that, but it certainly sounds like a great idea.
Thank you. And I think it is a good idea. And I think we all do. Craig, later, you're up.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. Good evening, and thank you for your presentation, your endurance, and your patience tonight. It's been a long night. Okay, so a few quick questions. You alluded to the ambulance bays and there not being enough room for them to pull through. How much more space would be needed to allow for a circular driveway so that ambulances would be able to come in and out at the same place and not have to back out? Next question. Has Northwell had any discussions with the MTA regarding a possible second entrance at 76th Street to the subway? The station would not only benefit from the improvements that you mentioned that are definitely going to be helpful in terms of the wider entrance at 77th, but an additional entrance would definitely help alleviate and spread out some of the passenger activity there. So I didn't know if that was ever considered or if there was ever if the MTA ever approached you on that. Then Alita briefly mentioned it, but I want to just find out more about if there was ever any discussion about the northbound platform and accessibility improvements, because it's going to be a real challenge for anyone with accessibility needs if they're able to arrive at Lenox Hill Hospital on the southbound side with a new elevator, but not have the same ability to be able to return home or anywhere north on the other side. So has the MTA given any indication to Northwell that they're planning to make this station accessible? As of now, it's not in their capital plan. And if not, would Northwell be willing to work with New York City Transit and the MTA to support accessibility on the north side? And will you consider providing financial support for this as part of mitigation for the entire project? And then finally, from a patient perspective, I'm just wondering of the two options, if there is an option that will really provide a more optimal experience for patient service and outcomes, or if it's really just one and the same. So thank you for entertaining those questions.
So thank you, first of all, for again, the support you have on the endurance of this. We really are committed, again, to answer all these questions and in transparency. So just thank you for that. Equally, if I remember correctly, you've been very passionate about all of these issues in the past. And so applauding you for that continued passion for these issues. There's a couple, and then I'll turn to some of my friends. From the perspective of the circular drive, it's not necessarily just about space, but about some of the way in which the building is supported and the ability to then create pass-through for that. It is something that we recognize would be a more ideal state, and we agree with you on that. And again, are fully committed to continuing to study that as we design this building, and we'll look at every conceivable possibility of executing on that aspect. So thank you for continuing to bring that up. I'll go to the northbound before I go to the 76. The northbound is just a component piece that we don't control the property on the northbound side. And I know we've talked about this, and you've come up with multiple different potentials for that. So I think we both agree that we're certainly willing to discuss opportunities to contribute to solutions designed to improve that northbound platform. But right now, there hasn't been anything proposed by either the landowners of that space or the MTA with regard to that. And I'll pass it just to my colleague to know whether or not MTA has given any indication about their intent on that.
So we not that we have heard from the MTA about the northbound side and what their intentions are. From your question though on adding the entrance on 76th Street, it actually is something that we did discuss with the MTA. One of our largest challenges is there is a large-scale sewer main that runs down 76th Street immediately adjacent to the subway station and does a whole slew of ups and downs. And the geometry of the sewer main with the only area we would be able to get a stair onto that platform, it just makes it not feasible. We worked through it multiple times with the MTA trying to figure out a path to achieve it, and it just, we couldn't achieve it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I didn't catch the fourth question. If it
better option of the two options, is there a better option?
Oh, between the two options, of the two options that are available, the most important piece for us in adding the optionality was that they can both work within the programming that we need. And so I don't personally put forward that there's a better option. This is, again, where I would like to hear more what the community feels is more important to them. Less height on Lexington and more in the mid-block, or remaining the height where it is and not moving any bulk to the mid-block. So thank you for that question. But again, we needed to make certain in part of this process that we were able to get the same number of rooms and the same clinical programming on the same tenets of what we were trying to achieve with both these options. So they both work.
Okay. Well, thank you. I believe we have come more or less to the end of our questions or comments for this evening. And I want to, on behalf of my co-chairs and the committee and the general public, thank you for being here. And so we will obviously see you again soon. Thank you. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this, Elizabeth. I'm going to ask whether or not there's any old business or new business. I hope not. And if someone would like to, Marco, always can count on you.
Thank you, Anthony. Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And so we are adjourned, and we will see you, we'll see you next month. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of you who